The scissors made no sound as they cut through her hair. Clara didn't scream, didn't beg. She stood in the morning cold, hands pressed flat against her thighs, and watched dark strands fall like ash around her feet. Her stepmother's smile was thin and sharp. "No one will want you now." The words landed heavy, meant to break her, but Clara's jaw stayed set, her eyes dry, because she'd already learned the hardest lesson. Survival didn't need witnesses, and sometimes the only power left was refusing to give them the tears they came for. Stay with me until the end. Drop a like and comment your city so I can see how far Clara's story travels. The Whitlock estate looked prettier than it had any right to be. Morning light turned the windows to gold, made the garden hedges look trimmed by angels instead of underpaid groundskeepers who hated their boss. From the road, you'd think money bought happiness here. You'd be wrong. Clara had been awake since 4, not by choice. Her body just knew the exact moment before her stepmother's maid would knock, before the demands would start piling up like snow in a storm you couldn't outrun. She'd learned to move in the dark, learned which floorboards creaked and how to make herself small enough that people looked right past her. She was 17, looked older. Exhaustion did that. The kitchen was her first stop, always. The cook, Mrs. Harrow, 50-something and built like she'd won every argument she'd ever had, was already there, elbow deep in bread dough. "You're late," Mrs. Harrow said, not looking up. "By 30 seconds, maybe." 30 seconds is 30 seconds, but the corner of her mouth twitched. "There's tea in the pot, still hot." Clara poured herself half a cup. Not a full one. That would be noticed, counted, tallied in the invisible ledger her stepmother kept of every small pleasure Clara tried to steal. She drank it standing up, fast enough to burn her tongue. "Big day today," Mrs. Harrow said. She punched the dough harder than necessary. "The missus has been in a mood since Tuesday." "When isn't she?" "Fair point." Clara set the cup down, already scanning her mental list. Floors, laundry, the second floor sitting room that no one used but had to look perfect anyway, just in case someone important decided to stand in it for 30 seconds. Silver that needed polishing. Windows that— "She wants to see you," Mrs. Harrow said. "Before breakfast. Said it was important." Clara's stomach dropped. Important meant bad. Important meant something had shifted in whatever game her stepmother played, and Clara was about to find out she'd lost another piece she didn't know was in play. Where? Her dressing room. Worse, the dressing room was where Vivian Whitlock performed her transformations, where she became the woman everyone in society thought she was: gracious, elegant, untouchable. It was also where she was most dangerous because there were no witnesses, no servants hovering close enough to hear, just mirrors and expensive things and whatever cruelties she'd been saving up. Clara climbed the stairs slowly, counted them. 42 from the kitchen to the second-floor landing, then another 16 to the wing where the family room sprawled. Her stepmother's door was open. Not a good sign. Open meant she wanted Clara to see her waiting, wanted the anxiety to build. Vivian sat at her vanity, backlit by the window. She was beautiful the way a knife was beautiful. All clean lines and sharp edges, nothing soft to catch on. 43 years old and fighting every single one of them with creams that cost more than most people made in a month. "Clara, come here." Not a request. Clara stepped inside, kept her hands loose at her sides. Vivian was studying her in the mirror, not bothering to turn around. "Do you know what today is?" "Thursday, ma'am." "Don't be clever." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Today is the day I stop pretending you're anything other than what you are." Clara's pulse kicked up, but she kept her face blank. Years of practice. "I don't understand." "No, you wouldn't." Vivian stood, smoothing her robe. "You've been living in a fantasy, dear, thinking that eventually, somehow, you'd be allowed to have what the other girls have. A season. A chance. A future." The words came out soft, almost gentle. That's how Clara knew they'd cut deep. "I've never asked for—" "You didn't have to ask. I could see it in your face every time my daughters talked about their gowns, their dance lessons, their prospects." Vivian moved closer. That little spark of hope. It was pathetic, really, but I let it burn because it was easier than snuffing it out. Until now. She pulled something from her dressing table drawer. Scissors. Not the delicate kind for embroidery, the kind gardeners used. Clara's breath caught. Your hair has always been your best feature, Vivian said, almost conversational. Thick, dark, the kind men write terrible poetry about. It's wasted on you, of course, but it's there. She tested the scissors, blade sliding against blade with a whisper of metal. I've decided you don't need it anymore. You can't. Can't? Vivian laughed, bright and cold. Oh, darling, I absolutely can. This is my house. You're here by my charity. And I'm tired of worrying that someone might look at you and see potential, so we're going to remove that problem, permanently. Clara took a step back. Vivian moved faster, grabbing her wrist with strength that didn't match her elegant appearance. Mrs. Harrow is downstairs. The maids are busy. No one is coming to help you. She smiled. Now sit. Clara could have fought, could have screamed, could have run, but she'd learned young that fighting Vivian only made things worse, made the punishment stretch longer and cut deeper. So she sat, pressed her hands flat against her thighs and stared straight ahead while her stepmother gathered her hair into one thick handful. The first cut was loud in the quiet room, a dull crunch as the blades closed, and suddenly Clara felt the weight shift, felt cool air on the back of her neck where there'd always been warmth. Vivian worked methodically. No artistry to it, no attempt at evenness. Just cutting, close to the scalp, letting the pieces fall where they wanted. Clara watched in the mirror as she disappeared, watched herself become someone else, someone strange and raw and small. There, Vivian said finally, stepping back. That's better. That's honest. Clara's reflection looked like a stranger, like someone who'd been sick or broken, or carved into something new without permission. Her eyes looked bigger. Her face looked naked. The spring ball is in 3 weeks, Vivian continued, setting the scissors down with a sharp click. My daughters will attend, of course. They'll be presented properly, given every advantage. You'll stay home. You'll scrub the floors they dance on, polish the silver they eat from, and remember your place. She tilted her head, studying her work. And every time you look in a mirror, you'll know exactly what you're worth. Nothing. She left, swept out of the room like she'd just finished a pleasant morning task, leaving Clara alone with the wreckage. Clara sat for a long time. She didn't cry, couldn't, maybe, like the part of her that made tears had been cut away with her hair. She just stared at herself, at this new shape she'd been forced into. Her hand drifted up, touched the rough stubble Vivian had left behind. It felt like static, like the beginning of something. She stood, walked to the window. Outside, the grounds looked the same. Pretty. Perfect. Lying. Something in her chest went quiet and cold and hard. The servants knew by lunchtime. That's how things worked in a house like this. News traveled through walls, slipped under doors, moved faster than any person could walk. Clara felt their eyes on her when she came down to help with the midday meal, felt their silence, heavy and careful, like they were afraid she might shatter if they spoke. Mrs. Harrow didn't say anything, just slid a plate of food toward her, more than usual, and turned back to her stove. Thank you, Clara said quietly. Eat it all. You look like a ghost. Clara tried. Got through half before her stomach rebelled. The bread tasted like paste, the cheese like chalk. Everything felt wrong, like her body was rejecting this new version of herself. Annabelle and Charlotte came through around 2. Vivian's daughters, 17 and 18, polished and pretty in ways that looked effortless but cost a fortune. They stopped when they saw Clara, stared. Oh my God, Charlotte breathed. Annabelle's hand flew to her mouth. Mother didn't, she wouldn't. She did. Clara kept her voice level. This morning. But why? Because I exist. Because she can. Because cruelty doesn't need a reason when it has power. I don't know, Clara lied. Charlotte looked genuinely horrified. Annabelle looked like she might cry. They weren't bad people, Vivian's daughters, just weak ones. The kind who saw suffering and felt bad about it, but never quite bad enough to do anything. Clara, I'm so sorry, Annabelle said. If I'd known, it's fine. It's not fine, it's awful. She reached out like she might touch Clara's shoulder, then pulled back. Is there anything we can do? No. Because there wasn't. What could they do? Fight their mother? Risk their own futures for someone who wasn't even real family? Clara didn't blame them for their helplessness. She just didn't have space for it either. They left, whispering to each other, and Clara went back to work. The days that followed were strange. Clara kept expecting something to change, for her stepmother to gloat, for the other servants to treat her differently, for the world to acknowledge what had been done. But everything just kept moving. Vivian ignored her completely. The servants gave her careful distance. Life continued its steady march toward the spring ball like Clara's humiliation was just another unremarkable Tuesday. She worked harder than before, woke up earlier, stayed later, polished silver until she could see her strange new reflection in every spoon, scrubbed floors that were already clean. Kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling, and feeling was a luxury she couldn't afford. At night, alone in her small room, barely bigger than a closet, tucked in the servant's wing where Vivian had moved her 2 years ago, Clara would touch her head and try to remember what her hair had felt like, the weight of it, the way it had moved. Small things you never noticed until they were gone. But she didn't cry, wouldn't give Vivian that. Instead, she started noticing other things, like how Vivian intercepted the mail every morning, personally sorting through it before anyone else could see, like how certain letters would disappear, letters addressed to Clara that she never received, like how the housekeeper, Mrs. Brennan, would sometimes start to say something to Clara, then catch Vivian's eye and go silent. Things had been happening, things Clara hadn't been told about. She started paying attention, started listening at doors she wasn't supposed to be near, started reading the discarded newspapers in Vivian's study before they went to the trash. 2 weeks before the ball, she found the letters. They were in Vivian's desk, unlocked, because why would they need to be locked when Clara was supposed to be too broken to fight back? 4 of them. Different handwriting, different paper, all addressed to Miss Clara Whitlock. Her hand shook as she opened the first one. Dear Miss Whitlock, I had the pleasure of making your acquaintance at the Winterbrook gathering last month. I was impressed by your knowledge of literature and your thoughtful conversation. I would be honored if you would allow me to call on you next Thursday. She'd never been to a Winterbrook gathering, had never met whoever signed this letter, Mr. Harrison Vance, according to the elegant signature at the bottom. The second letter was similar, an introduction from a Mr. Peter Ashford, referencing a conversation at a garden party Clara had never attended. The third was from a family friend who'd known her father, asking if she'd received his previous letters about a possible arrangement with his nephew. The fourth was different, shorter, more direct. Miss Whitlock, I have written 3 times requesting permission to call. Your silence suggests either disinterest or interference. If it's the former, I apologize for my persistence. If it's the latter, please find a way to send word. I remain, with great respect, Thomas Brennan. Thomas Brennan, Mrs. Brennan's son. The one who worked in the city, the one his mother talked about with obvious pride. Clara's vision went blurry around the edges. They'd been stolen, all of them. Every chance, every possibility, every door that might have opened. Vivian had closed them before Clara even knew they existed. She folded the letters carefully, put them back exactly where she'd found them, walked out of the study on legs that felt like water. In her room, she sat on the edge of her narrow bed and stared at the wall. Something was shifting inside her, something fundamental. Not breaking. That would have been easier, cleaner. This was harder. This was the moment when you realized the game was rigged, had always been rigged, and no amount of good behavior or patience or hope would ever change that. She'd been waiting for permission, waiting to be seen, waiting for someone to decide she deserved more than scraps. She was done waiting. The morning of the spring ball, the house exploded into chaos. Servants running everywhere, Vivian shouting orders, Annabelle crying because her dress didn't fit right, Charlotte locked in her room practicing her curtsy for the 100th time. Clara stayed out of the way, did her assigned tasks, cleaning the ballroom floor, arranging flowers in the grand entrance, making sure every surface gleamed. She worked in silence while around her the whole house prepared for a night that would change her stepsisters' lives. No one asked if she wanted to go. No one even pretended to consider it. By evening, the house was transformed. Candles everywhere, flowers bursting from every vase, the air thick with expensive perfume and anticipation. Carriages started arriving around 7, depositing families in their finest clothes. Clara watched from the shadows as society filed past her, glittering and loud and completely unaware she existed. Annabelle looked beautiful in pale blue. Charlotte looked striking in deep green. Vivienne looked triumphant, her daughters on either side of her like prizes she'd won. They left just after 8, climbing into the Whitlock carriage that would take them to the Blackthorn estate where the ball was being held. Vivienne didn't even glance in Claire's direction as she swept past. The door closed. The house went quiet. Clara stood in the empty hallway, still in her work dress, still invisible. Mrs. Harrow found her there 20 minutes later. "Come on," the cook said. "No point standing around. Kitchen needs cleaning." Clara followed her down. They worked in silence for a while, Mrs. Harrow washing dishes, Clara drying them. The routine was soothing, mindless. "She's cruel," Mrs. Harrow said finally. "What she did to you, what she's doing, it's wrong." "Wrong doesn't matter if no one stops it." "No, I suppose it doesn't." Mrs. Harrow set down a plate with more force than necessary. "Your father would be ashamed of her, if he could see this." Clara's father had been dead for 3 years, had remarried Vivienne when Clara was 12, desperate for help raising a daughter alone. He died 2 years later, probably from the stress of realizing he'd invited a viper into his home. His will had left everything to Vivienne, trusting she'd care for Clara like her own. That had been his first mistake. Maybe his only one. "He's not here," Clara said, "so it doesn't matter what he'd think." "Doesn't it?" "No." Clara set down the towel. "The only thing that matters is what I think, what I do, and I'm done being ashamed of what I can't change." She touched her head, the stubble that was just starting to soften into something like real hair again. "She wanted to break me. She failed." Mrs. Harrow studied her for a long moment. "You've changed." "Had to. Staying the same wasn't working." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." Clara picked the towel back up. "But I'm done waiting for permission to exist." They finished the dishes. Clara cleaned the kitchen floor, wiped down the counters, made sure everything was perfect for tomorrow morning when the family would come home and need breakfast like nothing had happened. Around midnight, she went to her room. Lay on her bed, still dressed, staring at the ceiling. She didn't know what came next, didn't have a plan, but something was building in her chest, something quiet and fierce and entirely her own. Tomorrow, she'd figure it out. Tomorrow, she'd start building a life that didn't need Vivienne's permission. Tonight, she just needed to rest. The ball was apparently spectacular. Clara heard all about it the next morning from servants who'd helped with the aftermath. The music, the dancing, the way Duke Rowan Blackthorn had looked like something out of a storybook. Young, handsome, powerful. Every family in the region had brought their daughters, hoping to catch his attention. He hadn't chosen anyone. The news rippled through the house like a stone through water. Vivienne came home tight-lipped and furious. Annabelle was crying, again, because she'd been certain the Duke had smiled at her. Charlotte was quieter, but Clara could see the disappointment carved into her face. Clara kept her head down, kept working, and tried not to smile. The Duke hadn't chosen. That meant the game was still in play. That meant all of Vivienne's careful planning, all her scheming and positioning and strategic humiliation of Clara, none of it had paid off yet. It was a small victory. Clara would take it. But 3 days later, something changed. A messenger arrived at the house. Not a servant, not a regular courier, someone official, wearing Blackthorn livery. He had a letter, sealed with the Duke's personal crest. Vivienne received him in the drawing room. Clara was dusting nearby, close enough to hear, invisible enough to be ignored. "The Duke requests the presence of the entire Whitlock household," the messenger said. "Tomorrow at 2. He wishes to meet every member of the family." Vivienne's face went carefully blank. "Every member?" "Yes, ma'am. He was quite specific." "I see. And might I ask why?" "The Duke will explain tomorrow." The messenger left. Vivienne stood frozen for a full minute before she seemed to remember Clara was in the room. "Get out," she said quietly. Clara left, but she was smiling. Every member of the family. For the first time in 3 years, someone wanted to see her. Vivienne spent the next 18 hours like a general preparing for war. Clara watched it unfold from the margins. The frantic consultations with the dressmaker who was summoned at dawn, The heated discussions about which jewelry would make the right impression, the way Vivian kept pacing the drawing room like she was trying to wear a path through the carpet.
"Mother, you're going to make yourself ill," Charlotte said around noon, when Vivian had rejected her fourth outfit and was seriously considering a fifth. "Be quiet. You don't understand what's at stake. The Duke wants to meet us. That's good, isn't it? It's good if he's interested in one of you. It's a disaster if he's simply being thorough." Vivian's hands twisted together. "Every member of the household—"
Why would he phrase it that way? Annabelle, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. Maybe he just wants to understand the family better, see how we all fit together. Or maybe, Vivian said slowly, someone told him something. Someone suggested there was more to the Whitlock family than what was presented at the ball. Clara, who was supposed to be polishing the fireplace tools and being invisible, felt the weight of Vivian's gaze shift toward her. "That's ridiculous," Charlotte said. "Who would—" "Go to your rooms, both of you. I need to think." The girls left. Clara kept working, kept her eyes down, kept breathing steady. Vivian crossed the room slowly, stopped 3 feet away. "If you've done something," she said quietly, "if you've reached out to someone, said something you shouldn't have, I will make what I did to your hair look like kindness. Do you understand me?" Clara looked up, met her stepmother's eyes without flinching. "I haven't done anything." "Then why does he want to see you?" "I don't know. Maybe he actually means the entire household. Maybe he wants to meet the cook and the housekeeper too. Don't be smart." "I'm not being smart. I'm being honest." Clara set down the cloth she'd been using. "You've spent 3 years making sure I don't exist in any way that matters. Why would the Duke even know I'm here?" Vivian's jaw worked. She wanted to argue, wanted to find some hole in Clara's logic, but there wasn't one. She'd been too thorough in her erasure. "Wear something appropriate," she finally said. "Not servant's clothes. You're still a Whitlock, technically. Find one of your old dresses, the gray one. And for heaven's sake, try to look less like you've been working in the fields." She swept out. Clara waited until her footsteps faded completely before letting out the breath she'd been holding. Mrs. Harrow appeared in the doorway like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. "You're playing a dangerous game," the cook said. "I'm not playing anything." "Yes, you are. I can see it in your face. You think this is your chance." Clara stood, joints cracking from kneeling too long. "What if it is?" "Then you better be ready for what happens when Vivian realizes it too." Mrs. Harrow studied her. "That woman didn't claw her way into this family to lose it to the girl she spent years burying. She'll fight dirty." "She already fights dirty. She can always fight dirtier." Clara knew that, had always known that. But something had shifted in her when she'd found those letters, when she'd realized how much had been stolen from her. Fear didn't feel like enough reason to stay small anymore. "I'll be careful," she said. Mrs. Harrow snorted. "No, you won't. But maybe that's good. Careful hasn't gotten you anywhere." That night, Clara pulled out the gray dress Vivian had mentioned. It was 3 years old, a little tight across the shoulders, a little short in the hem. She'd grown since the last time she'd worn it, grown harder, grown sharper, grown into someone who didn't quite fit the same space anymore. She tried it on, looked at herself in the small cracked mirror in her room. The dress made her look younger, softer, like someone who still believed in fairness. She took it off, found a different one, deep blue, simpler, with long sleeves that hid how strong her arms had gotten from years of manual labor. This one fit better, made her look like exactly what she was, someone who'd survived. She hung it carefully, tried to sleep, couldn't. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up and went downstairs to the kitchen. Made herself tea, sat in the dark and let herself imagine, just for a few minutes, what it might feel like if tomorrow changed everything. The fantasy lasted about 5 minutes before reality crashed back in. The Duke was meeting the household because he was thorough, or curious, or bored. Not because he was looking for her specifically. She needed to remember that. Needed to keep her expectations buried so deep they couldn't hurt when they got crushed. But still. When dawn finally came, she was dressed and ready 2 hours early. The Whitlock carriage left at 1:30. Clara sat across from Vivian, who looked like she'd swallowed glass. Annabelle and Charlotte flanked their mother, both silent, both nervous. Nobody spoke during the 20-minute ride to the Blackthorn estate. Clara watched the countryside roll past and tried not to throw up. The Blackthorn estate made the Whitlock property look like a cottage. 3 stories of gray stone, windows that caught the afternoon sun and threw it back like armor, gardens that went on forever. A circular drive that could fit 6 carriages without crowding. Money. Old money. The kind that didn't just buy things. It bought power, influence, futures. A servant met them at the entrance. Older man, perfectly pressed uniform, the kind of controlled expression that came from years of seeing everything and reacting to nothing. "Miss Whitlock and family," Vivian said, like she owned the place already. "You're expected. Please follow me." They were led through hallways that seemed designed to make you feel small. High ceilings, portraits of stern-looking ancestors, the kind of quiet that money bought, thick carpets, heavy doors, air that didn't dare move without permission. The servant stopped at a set of double doors, knocked twice, waited. "Enter." The voice was younger than Clara expected, firmer. The doors opened. The room was a study. Books lining 2 walls, a massive desk near the window, chairs arranged for conversation. And standing near the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel like he was posing for a portrait, was Duke Rowan Blackthorn. He was 26, dark hair, strong jaw, eyes that looked like they'd never missed a detail in their life. Tall enough that you had to look up to meet his gaze. Not handsome in a soft way, handsome in the way a sword was handsome. All-purpose, no decoration. "Mrs. Whitlock," he said, "thank you for coming." Vivian curtsied, deep, perfect, practiced. "Your Grace, it's an honor." "Please, sit." He gestured to the chairs, waited until everyone was settled before taking his own seat. His eyes swept the room, cataloging each person. They landed on Clara. Stopped. She felt the weight of that attention like a physical thing, forced herself to hold still, to not fidget or look away. "I don't believe we've been introduced," he said. Before Clara could answer, Vivian jumped in. "That's Clara, my late husband's daughter. She helps around the house." "Helps around the house?" The Duke's tone was flat. "She's family, but she helps around the house." "Well, she prefers to be useful rather than—" "I prefer to work," Clara said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "It's better than sitting idle." Vivian's eyes went sharp. A warning. The Duke's expression didn't change. "Admirable, though I notice you weren't at the ball." "I wasn't invited, Your Grace." "You live in the household but weren't invited to a family event." "She had duties," Vivian said quickly. "Someone needed to maintain the house while we were out. Clara volunteered." "Did you?" The Duke looked at Clara again. "Volunteer?" Clara could lie, could make this easy, could say yes and watch this whole conversation deflate into nothing. She thought about the letters, about 3 years of being erased. "No," she said. "I wasn't given a choice." The room went very, very quiet. Annabelle looked horrified. Charlotte looked like she wanted to disappear. Vivian looked like she was planning Clara's murder in 17 different ways. The Duke leaned back in his chair. "I see. And the hair?" Clara's hand went to her head before she could stop it. The stubble had grown out enough to feel soft, but it was still obviously recent, obviously deliberate. "I cut it," she said. "You cut it." "Yes, all of it, to the scalp, by choice." Clara hesitated. The lie was right there. Easy, safe. "No," she said again. "That wasn't by choice either." Vivian stood up so fast her chair scraped. "Your Grace, if I may explain—" "Sit down, Mrs. Whitlock." It wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. Vivian sat. The Duke's attention never left Clara. "Who cut your hair?" "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." Clara looked at Vivian, saw the fury there, the promise of consequences, looked back at the Duke. "My stepmother thought I'd look better this way." "I see." He was quiet for a moment. "When did this happen?" 3 weeks ago, the morning everyone started preparing for your ball. And you've been working in the house since then, maintaining it, while your stepsisters prepared for society." "Yes, Your Grace." He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the grounds like he was thinking about something far away. "The ball was interesting," he said finally. Met dozens of families. Lovely daughters, all of them, well-educated, well-dressed, well-rehearsed. He turned back. But something bothered me. Every family I spoke to, the mothers kept mentioning how complete their households were, how their daughters represented the best of what they had to offer, and I kept wondering, if this is the best, where's the rest? Vivian's face had gone pale. So I started asking questions, the Duke continued, sent people to dig into family histories, and I found something curious. Several families had daughters who somehow never made it to social events, who were mentioned in old records but seemed to vanish from current ones. His eyes found Clara again. Daughters who were there but not there, present but invisible. Your Grace, Vivian started, I can assure you, Mrs. Whitlock, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I'd appreciate a direct answer. Have you been deliberately excluding Clara from social opportunities? She's not suited for yes or no. The silence stretched. Vivian's hands were shaking. I've been protecting her, she said finally, from a world that would be cruel to her, from disappointment, by cutting her hair, by making her work while her stepsisters prepare for futures, by intercepting her correspondence. Clara's breath caught. He knew about the letters. Vivian's expression cracked. How did you... I'm thorough, Mrs. Whitlock. It's how my family has maintained power for 8 generations. He looked at Annabelle and Charlotte. Did you know about the letters? No, Charlotte whispered. We didn't know anything, Annabelle added. She was crying. Mother, you couldn't have... I did what was necessary, Vivian said. Her voice had gone cold, defensive. Clara is not my responsibility beyond basic care. Her father left her in my custody, but he left me no resources to provide for her the way I can provide for my own daughters. I made a choice. You made several choices, the Duke said, all of them cruel. Survival is cruel. No, survival is necessary. This was something else. He crossed back to his desk, pulled out a folder, set it down with a heavy thump. This is every letter that was sent to Clara over the past 3 years. Requests to call, invitations to events, inquiries about her well-being from people who knew her father. He opened the folder. 43 letters, none of which she received. Clara felt dizzy. 43. She'd found 4. You had no right, Vivian said. I had every right. This is my duchy. These are my people. And when I discovered that someone under my jurisdiction was being systematically erased, I took an interest. He looked at Clara. I apologize for not discovering this sooner. You didn't know I existed, Claire said. No one did. That was the point. Well, I know now. He closed the folder. Mrs. Whitlock, you're going to return home, and you're going to think very carefully about the choices you've made, because I'm going to be watching. And if I discover that Clara has been further mistreated, further isolated, further harmed in any way, I will make sure that every family in this duchy knows exactly what kind of woman you are. Vivian stood slowly. Her daughters stood with her. Are we dismissed? She asked. You are. Clara stays. Absolutely not. She's a grown woman who can make her own choices. Clara, would you like to stay and continue this conversation, or would you prefer to leave with your stepmother? Every eye in the room turned to her. This was it. The moment. The choice that would define everything that came after. Clara thought about the house, about her small room, about years of invisible labor and stolen futures. I'll stay, she said. Vivian's face went from pale to red. You ungrateful Mrs. Whitlock. The Duke's voice cut through whatever she'd been about to say. Leave, now, before I decide to make this situation significantly worse for you. For a moment, Clara thought Vivian might actually attack her, might lunge across the room and finish what she'd started with the scissors. But Charlotte grabbed her mother's arm, and Annabelle was already moving toward the door, and the moment passed. They left. The door closed. Clara was alone with the Duke. Her legs felt weak. She sat down hard in the nearest chair. Are you all right? He asked. I don't know. Ask me in 5 minutes. He almost smiled. Almost. Would you like water? Tea? Answers, maybe. Why did you do this? Do what? All of it. The investigation, the confrontation. You don't know me. He returned to his seat. I don't. But I know injustice when I see it, And I'm tired of watching powerful people destroy others just because they can. That's very noble. It's not noble, it's practical. Societies that tolerate cruelty rot from the inside. I'd rather stop the rot. Clara studied him. He didn't look like someone who made impulsive decisions, didn't look like someone who did anything without calculating the cost. What happens now? She asked. That depends. What do you want to happen? I don't understand. You have options now. You could return home. I'll ensure Vivian understands there are consequences if she retaliates. You could seek employment elsewhere. I have contacts who would be willing to help. Or, he paused. You could stay here. Here. In this house. The estate employs dozens of people. Most of them live on the grounds. I'm sure we could find something suitable. Clara's mind was racing. Why would you offer that? Because you deserve a chance to build a life that isn't dictated by someone else's cruelty. You don't know anything about me, what I deserve or don't deserve. Then tell me, who are you, Clara Whitlock? The question hit harder than it should have, because she didn't know, had spent so long being shaped by other people's decisions that she'd lost track of which parts were actually hers. I'm someone who works hard, she said finally. Someone who doesn't give up. Someone who's tired of being erased. That's a start. Is it? It's more than most people have. He leaned forward. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering opportunity. What you do with it is entirely up to you. Clara wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this was real, that someone actually saw her as more than a problem to be managed or a resource to be used. But 3 years of Vivian had taught her to be suspicious of kindness. I need time, she said. To think. To figure out what I actually want instead of just reacting to what I don't. Reasonable. Take as long as you need. He stood. I'll have someone show you to a guest room. You're welcome to stay here tonight, or I can arrange transport back to the Whitlock estate. Your choice. I'll stay. Just for tonight. He nodded, moved toward the door, stopped. Clara? Yes? The hair will grow back. The rest, the stolen letters, the lost time, that's harder to recover. But you're still young, still capable. Don't let what was done to you define what you do next. He left before she could respond. A servant arrived minutes later, a woman around 40, kind eyes, practical dress. I'm Margaret, she said, head of household staff. The Duke asked me to get you settled. I don't have anything with me. No clothes, no... We'll sort that out. Come on. Clara followed her through more hallways, up a staircase that felt like climbing into a different world. The guest wing was quiet, doors closed, everything maintained at a level of perfection that suggested people rarely stayed here. Margaret opened one of the doors. The room inside was bigger than Clara's entire servants' quarters back home. A real bed. A wardrobe. Windows that looked out over gardens lit by the setting sun. Baths through there, Margaret said, pointing. I'll have some clothes sent up. Probably won't fit perfect, but they'll do for now. Dinner's at 7 if you want to join, or I can have something brought to your room. Room is fine. Thank you. Margaret nodded, started to leave, turned back. He's a good man, she said. The Duke. Fair. Doesn't make promises he can't keep. If he said he'd help you, he will. I don't know if I want help. No? What do you want? Clara looked around the room, at the space, the privacy, the silence that wasn't weighted with threat. I want to stop being afraid, she said quietly. I want to stop looking over my shoulder. I want to wake up and not immediately calculate what I need to do to survive the day. Then maybe staying here isn't such a bad idea. Margaret left. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, the softest thing she'd touched in years, and tried to process what had just happened. The Duke knew, had known, maybe before today, had investigated, had cared enough to confront Vivian publicly. Why? She stood, paced, tried to think through the implications. Vivian would be furious, would see this as Clara's betrayal, even though Clara hadn't done anything except tell the truth. Going back to that house meant walking into a war zone, but staying here meant accepting help from someone she didn't know, meant trusting that his motives were genuine. Both options felt dangerous. A knock interrupted her spiral. Margaret was back with an armful of clothes. These should work, she said, setting them on the bed.
Tomorrow, we can get you properly fitted if you decide to stay longer. If I decide. That's what I said, isn't it? Margaret's expression softened. Look, I don't know your whole story, don't need to, but I know that look, the one that says you're trying to figure out if this is real or just another trap. And I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that this house has been different since the old Duke died. Rowan, the current Duke, he's trying to fix things. Make this place what it should have been all along. What was it before? Cruel, in subtle ways, the kind where everyone smiled and no one was actually happy. She moved toward the door. Think about it. You've got time. Clara tried on the clothes after Margaret left. They fit well enough, a simple dress, nothing fancy but clean and whole. No patches, no worn spots, no history of someone else's life embedded in the fabric. She looked at herself in the mirror, still strange, still raw, but maybe starting to look like someone who belonged to herself instead of to someone else's plans. Dinner arrived at 7. Soup, bread, roasted vegetables. Real food, not scraps. She ate slowly, tasting everything, letting herself have this moment without guilt. After, she opened the window. Let cool evening air wash over her. Listened to the estate settling into night, distant voices, footsteps on gravel, the kind of peaceful noise that came from people finishing honest work and heading toward rest. She could stay, could build something here, could let the Duke's offer become her new foundation, or she could go back, face Vivian, fight for the space she'd always occupied instead of running from it. Both choices felt impossible, both felt necessary. Around midnight, still awake, still thinking, Clara heard footsteps in the hall. They stopped outside her door. A pause. Then a soft knock. It's Margaret. Just checking you're all right. Clara opened the door. Can't sleep. Neither can half the staff. Word travels fast. Everyone knows what happened today. Margaret leaned against the doorframe. You're famous now. The girl who told the Duke the truth. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Maybe. But trouble happened anyway. She studied Clara. He wants to see you tomorrow. The Duke. Talk about next steps. What if I don't know what next steps I want? Then tell him that. Honesty got you this far. Margaret left. Clara closed the door, returned to the window. In the distance, she could just barely see the lights of town. Beyond that, somewhere, was the Whitlock estate. Vivian would be there, planning, calculating, preparing for whatever Clara did next. For 3 years, Vivian had controlled the board, had moved all the pieces, had won every game because Clara hadn't even known she was playing. But now Clara knew how the game worked, knew what had been stolen, knew, finally, that she was allowed to want more than survival. The question was what she did with that knowledge. She thought about her father, about the way he used to say that strength wasn't about never falling, it was about deciding to get back up. She'd been down for 3 years, buried, erased, time to get up. The decision crystallized somewhere around 2 in the morning. Not dramatic, not explosive, just a quiet certainty that settled into her bones and refused to leave. She would stay, would take the Duke's offer, would build something here that Vivian couldn't touch. And then, when she was strong enough, when she had her own foundation, she'd go back. Not as the girl who'd been broken, as the woman who'd survived and chosen herself anyway. Vivian wanted her erased. Clara would prove that some things refused to disappear. She finally slept, dreamed of nothing, woke to sunlight and Margaret knocking with breakfast and news that the Duke would see her at 10. Clara dressed carefully, braided her short hair as best she could. It barely held, but it looked intentional. 8. Prepared herself. At 10 exactly, she was back in the study. The Duke was already there, reading something that looked important. He glanced up when she entered. You look rested. I look less terrified, maybe. Also good. He set the papers aside. Have you made a decision? I want to stay, if the offer's still open. It is. What changed your mind? Clara thought about that, about all the small moments that had led here. I'm tired of letting other people decide what I'm worth. Figured I should try deciding for myself. Fair enough. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. Let's talk details. They spent the next hour working through the practical pieces. She'd work in the household, not as a servant,
Not exactly, but as someone learning the estate management. Margaret would teach her. She'd have her own room, her own space, her own salary. Small to start, the Duke said, but it'll grow as you learn more. I don't need much. That's not the point. The point is you should have what you earn. It felt too good, too easy. Clara kept waiting for the catch. Why are you doing this? She asked. Really? He considered the question. My father ran this estate like a business. Efficient, profitable, utterly devoid of humanity. People were assets or liabilities, nothing in between. He looked out the window. He died 2 years ago, left me everything, including the mess he'd made of every relationship he'd ever had. I'm sorry. Don't be. He was terrible. But his being terrible taught me something. Power without compassion destroys everything it touches. I'm trying to build something different, a place where people matter more than profit, where cruelty isn't just accepted because it's efficient. That's ambitious. It's necessary, and it means when I see someone being crushed by a system that's supposed to protect them, I step in. Not because I'm noble, because I refuse to become my father. Clara understood that. Understood the weight of trying to be different from the people who raised you. All right, she said. I'll stay, I'll work, I'll learn, and I'll try not to disappoint you. You couldn't possibly. You've already survived the unsurvivable. Everything else is just details. He stood, extended his hand. She shook it. His grip was firm, steady, the kind that meant what it promised. Welcome to Blackthorn, he said. Clara left the study feeling lighter than she had in years. Found Margaret waiting in the hall. Well? The older woman asked. I'm staying. Good. We start tomorrow. Today you rest, settle in, get used to being somewhere you're allowed to breathe. Margaret started walking, and Clara fell into step beside her. Fair warning, it's not going to be easy. Working here means actually working. The Duke doesn't tolerate laziness any more than he tolerates cruelty. I can work. I know you can. I've heard what you did at the Whitlock estate. 3 years of keeping that house running while being treated like you didn't exist. That takes strength. They turned a corner. Clara caught a glimpse of herself in one of the hall mirrors, still strange, still adjusting, but maybe starting to look like she fit in this space. Margaret, what happens if Vivian comes here, tries to take me back? She won't. How can you be sure? Because the Duke made it very clear that any attempt to force you into anything would result in consequences she can't afford. He's got more power than she'll ever have. She knows that. Clara wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that she was finally safe, but Vivian had spent 3 years proving she'd do anything to maintain control. Clara couldn't imagine that changing just because someone more powerful had stepped in. That night, alone in her room, Clara wrote a letter. Not to Vivian, nothing to say there that hadn't already been said. To Mrs. Harrow, I'm staying at the Blackthorn estate for now. Tell the other servants I'm all right. Tell them I'm sorry if this makes things harder. And tell them thank you for the kindness they showed when no one else would. I don't know what happens next, but I know I couldn't go back to being invisible. Not anymore. Clara. She sealed it, left it with Margaret to send, and tried to let herself hope that maybe, finally, things were starting to change. But 2 days later, hope shattered. Margaret found her in the library where she'd been reading about estate management and trying to absorb 3 years of education in a week. There's a problem, Margaret said. Her face was grim. What kind of problem? Vivian filed a formal complaint with the magistrate. Says you were taken against your will. Says the Duke is holding you here illegally. Clara's stomach dropped. That's not true. We know that. But she's forcing a hearing. Tomorrow. You'll have to testify. She's going to make me look like a liar. Probably. But you've got the Duke on your side. And the truth. That has to count for something. Did it? Clara wasn't sure. Vivian was good at making lies sound like truth. Good at twisting situations until up looked like down and victims looked like villains. The hearing was scheduled for 2 o'clock the next day. Clara barely slept, kept running through possible questions, possible accusations, possible ways this could all fall apart. The Duke found her at dawn, already dressed, already pacing. You're going to wear a hole in the floor, he said. I'm terrified. Good. Fear means you understand what's at stake. But don't let it control you. He sat down,
gestured for her to do the same. Vivian is going to try to paint you as unstable, as someone who can't make rational decisions. She'll use your appearance against you. My hair. Among other things, she'll say you're damaged, unreliable, that I've manipulated you. How do I fight that? By being exactly who you are. Calm, honest, unshakable. She wins if she makes you react, so don't react. Easier said than done. They arrived at the magistrate's office just before 2. Vivian was already there, dressed in perfect morning clothes, black, elegant, the picture of concerned motherhood. Her solicitor stood beside her, a thin man with sharp eyes and a sharper suit. The magistrate was older, gray-bearded, the kind of man who looked like he'd heard every lie ever told and wasn't impressed by any of them. "Let's begin," he said. "Mrs. Whitlock, you've filed a complaint regarding your stepdaughter, Clara. Please state your case." Vivian's solicitor stepped forward. "Your Honor, my client is deeply concerned for Miss Clara Whitlock's well-being. She believes Clara has been unduly influenced by the Duke and is being held at his estate against her wishes." "Is that true, Miss Whitlock?" the magistrate asked, looking at Clara. Clara stood. "No, Your Honor, I'm staying at the Blackthorn estate by choice." "She doesn't understand what she's saying," Vivian said, her voice breaking. "She's been through trauma. Look at her. Someone cut her hair. Someone hurt her. She's not in a state to make rational decisions." "Someone cut my hair," Clara said quietly. "That someone was you." The room went silent. "That's a lie," Vivian said. "Is it? Ask your daughters. They saw me after. They know what happened." Vivian's solicitor jumped in. "Your Honor, Miss Whitlock has clearly been coached." "I don't need coaching to remember my own life," Clara said. Her voice was steady now. "I remember 3 years of being erased, of having my letters stolen, of being kept from any opportunity that might have given me a future. I remember all of it, and I choose not to go back." The magistrate leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitlock, did you cut at your stepdaughter's hair?" "I was trying to help her. She was becoming vain, unfocused." "Yes or no?" Vivian's jaw tightened. "Yes, but it was for her own good." "And did you prevent her from attending social functions, from receiving correspondence?" "I was protecting her from—" "Yes or no, Mrs. Whitlock?" "Yes." The magistrate sat back. "Then it seems to me that Miss Clara has every reason to seek residence elsewhere. The complaint is dismissed." Vivian stood so fast her chair fell over. "You can't—" "I can, and I have. Miss Whitlock is of age. She's made her choice clear. Unless you can provide evidence of coercion, actual evidence, not speculation, this matter is closed." They left. Vivian's fury was so thick Clara could taste it. Outside, the Duke touched her shoulder. "You did well." "She's not done. You know that, right? This won't stop her." "No, it won't, but you won. Today. That matters." Clara wanted to feel victorious, wanted to feel safe. Instead, she felt like she'd just painted a target on her back. 3 days later, she found out how right she'd been. A fire started in the east wing of the Blackthorn estate. Small at first, easily contained, but the investigation revealed something that made Clara's blood run cold. It had been set deliberately, and the only room damaged was the one that had been prepared for Clara before she'd moved to a different wing. Someone had tried to kill her. The Duke called a meeting. His face was carved from stone. "This ends now," he said. "I'm posting guards. No one enters or leaves this estate without being documented. And Clara," he looked at her, "you don't go anywhere alone. Not until we know who did this." But Clara already knew. Vivian had made her choice, and it wasn't going to end until one of them was gone. The guard stationed outside Clara's door was named Thomas, 22, broad-shouldered, the kind of serious that came from growing up poor and needing this job more than he needed to be liked. He didn't talk much, just nodded when Clara passed him, checked every person who came near, and looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. Clara understood the feeling. 3 days after the fire, she was going stir-crazy. The estate felt smaller every hour, beautiful, comfortable, and increasingly like a very nice cage. She couldn't go to the gardens without Thomas trailing 10 feet behind. Couldn't walk the halls without Margaret or another staff member materializing to ask if she needed anything. The Duke had locked down the entire property like they were preparing for a siege. Maybe they were. "You're pacing again," Margaret said from the doorway. She'd taken to checking on Clara every few hours, like she expected to find her either gone or on fire. "I'm thinking." Thinking looks a lot like wearing out the carpet. Margaret came in, closed the door, lowered her voice. "The Duke's investigating, quietly. He's got people looking into who might have set that fire." It was Vivian. Probably, but probably doesn't hold up in court. He needs proof. Clara stopped pacing. "How long is that going to take?" "As long as it takes. In the meantime, you stay safe. You stay here." "I can't just hide." "Why not? You're good at surviving. Hiding's part of that." "Hiding's what I did for 3 years. I'm done with it." Margaret studied her. "What are you planning?" "Nothing. Yet." Clara returned to the window. Outside, the gardens were perfectly maintained, perfectly peaceful, like the fire had never happened. "But I'm tired of reacting, of letting Vivian make all the moves while I just try not to die." "So what's the alternative? You go after her? That's suicide." "Maybe. But at least it would be my choice." "Your choice to die. Great plan." Clara turned. "She's not going to stop. You know that. The fire was just the first attempt. There'll be more, and eventually one of them will work, unless I do something." "Like what?" "I don't know yet." Margaret sighed, sat down heavily in the chair near the door. "You're going to get yourself killed, and I'm going to feel terrible about it because I like you." "I like you too." "Good. Then listen to someone who's lived longer and knows how these things work. Vivian has resources you don't. Connections, money, experience at being ruthless. You go after her directly, you lose. So I do nothing. You let the Duke handle it. That's what he's here for." Clara wanted to believe that would work, wanted to trust that justice would find Vivian, that the system would actually function the way it was supposed to. But she'd spent 3 years learning that systems protected people like Vivian, people with money and status and the ability to make truth look like lies. And lies look like truth. "I'll think about it," she said. Margaret left, shaking her head. Clara did think about it. Thought about it through dinner, through another sleepless night, through breakfast the next morning where the Duke joined her and looked almost as tired as she felt. "Any progress?" she asked. "Some. We know the fire was set with lamp oil. Someone broke in through a service entrance that should have been locked. The timing suggests inside knowledge. Whoever did this knew the guard rotations, knew which room was yours, knew exactly when to strike." "That's not comforting." "It's not meant to be. It means we have a serious problem." He set down his coffee. "I'm bringing in additional security. People I trust completely. Former soldiers, mostly. They'll patrol the grounds, monitor the entrances, make sure nothing like this happens again. You're turning this place into a fortress. If that's what it takes to keep you safe, yes." Clara pushed her eggs around her plate. "What if I don't want to be kept safe? What if I want to actually solve this?" "Solve how?" "I don't know. But hiding here while you build walls around me, that's not solving anything. That's just delaying." The Duke leaned back. "What do you suggest?" "Let me go back." "Absolutely not. Hear me out. Vivian thinks she's won, thinks she's scared me into hiding. What if I show up at the house, act like nothing happened, make her think I'm giving up, coming back because I have nowhere else to go?" "That's the worst idea I've ever heard." "Maybe, but it might work. If she thinks I'm broken, if she thinks she's back in control, she'll get comfortable, might make a mistake. Or she'll just finish what the fire started." The Duke's jaw was tight. "I'm not sending you back there, not after everything she's done." "Then what? I stay here forever? Live my whole life looking over my shoulder?" "If necessary. That's not a life, that's just a different kind of prison." They stared at each other across the breakfast table. Two people with completely different ideas of what safety looked like. Finally, the Duke spoke. "There's a ball next week. Every major family in the duchy will be there, including the Whitlocks. I know, Margaret mentioned it. I want you to attend. With me." Clara blinked. "What?" "As my guest, publicly. I want everyone to see that you're under my protection,
that you're not hiding, that you're exactly where you belong. That's going to make Vivian furious. Good. Fury makes people sloppy, and when she gets sloppy, we'll catch her. It was risky, bold, exactly the kind of a thing that could backfire spectacularly. Clara loved it. All right, she said, I'll go. There are conditions. Of course there are. You don't leave my side, not once. You stay where I can see you, where my guards can see you, and if anything feels wrong, even slightly wrong, you tell me immediately. Agreed. I'm serious, Clara. This isn't a game. I know it's not a game. Vivian's trying to kill me. Believe me, I'm taking this seriously. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. We'll need to get you a dress, something appropriate. I don't have money for... It's handled. Consider it part of your employment. You're representing the Blackthorn estate now. That comes with certain expectations. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could manage on her own, but the truth was she had nothing appropriate for a ball, and pride wasn't worth showing up looking like she didn't belong. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Wait until we survive the night. The dressmaker arrived that afternoon, a woman named Celeste who looked at Clara like she was a problem to be solved. She had pins in her mouth and opinions about everything. Too thin, she muttered, circling Clara. We'll need padding in the bodice. And the hair, well, we'll work with what we have. The hair's growing, Clara said defensively. Slowly, very slowly. Celeste pulled out fabric samples. What's your favorite color? I don't have one. Everyone has one. I spent 3 years wearing whatever was cheapest and least noticeable. I didn't get to have favorites. Celeste paused, really looked at Clara for the first time. Right. Well, you get to have them now, so pick. Clara looked at the fabrics. Deep blues, rich greens, soft grays, colors she'd never been allowed to wear because they might draw attention, might make someone look at her twice. Blue, she said. Dark blue, like the sky right before it goes black. Midnight blue. Good choice. Brings out your eyes. Celeste started draping fabric. This is going to take a few days. You'll need to come back for fittings. I'm not going anywhere. So I heard. The whole staff's talking about it. The girl who survived. Celeste stuck a pin through fabric with more force than necessary. Vivian Whitlock's made enemies, more than she knows. People are glad to see someone finally standing up to her. I'm not standing up to her. I'm just trying not to die. Same thing sometimes. The fitting took 2 hours. By the end, Clara's arms ached from holding them in position, and her patience had worn thin. But Celeste seemed satisfied. Come back in 3 days. We'll do the final fitting then. Try not to lose any more weight. I don't want to have to take this in again. Clara promised she'd try. That night, unable to sleep again, she found herself in the estate library. It was massive. 3 stories of books, rolling ladders, the kind of quiet that felt sacred. She'd been spending more time here, reading everything she could about law, property rights, contracts, trying to understand the systems that had been used against her. She was deep in a particularly dry legal text when she heard footsteps. The Duke appeared, also clearly unable to sleep. He looked surprised to find her there. Sorry, Clara said. I can leave if you... Stay. I just came to think. He moved to the window. Can't seem to do that anywhere else lately. Because of me. Because of the situation. Which isn't your fault. Clara set down the book. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. Why do you care? Really? You barely know me. This isn't your fight. He was quiet for a long time. My mother died when I was 8, fell down the stairs. Everyone said it was an accident. Clara waited. It wasn't. My father pushed her. I saw it happen. The Duke's voice was flat, factual. He saw me seeing, and he made it very clear that if I ever told anyone, I'd have an accident too, so I didn't tell. I stayed quiet. Let everyone believe the lie. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me something important. Power without accountability is just organized cruelty. My father had absolute power over this estate, over everyone in it, and he used that power to hurt people, to control them, to erase anyone who challenged him. He turned to look at her. When I inherited, I swore I'd be different, that I'd use whatever power I had to protect people instead of destroying them. So when I see someone like Vivian doing exactly what my father did, erasing you, hurting you, treating you like you don't matter, I can't ignore it, won't ignore it. Clara understood, finally. This wasn't about her at all. It was about the Duke fighting the ghost of his father, fighting to be someone different. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "Thank you for letting me help, even when you don't want to." They sat in silence for a while. Two people damaged by other people's cruelty, trying to figure out how to be whole again. "The ball," Clara said eventually. "What happens if Vivian tries something?" "Then we respond, publicly. I've been too careful, too subtle. Maybe it's time to stop being subtle." "What does that mean?" "It means if she makes a move, I don't just defend you. I destroy her, socially, financially, whatever it takes to make sure she never hurts anyone again." The certainty in his voice was almost frightening. Clara had seen gentle power, careful power, but this was something else. This was someone who'd been holding back and was done pretending to be harmless. "You scare me a little," she said. "Good. Maybe that means I'll actually scare Vivian." The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Margaret coached Clara on proper etiquette, which fork to use, how to curtsy without looking like she was mocking the gesture, how to make polite conversation with people who probably thought she was beneath them. "Remember," Margaret said during one particularly brutal practice session, "these people only have power because everyone agrees they do. You don't have to agree." That's very philosophical. That's very practical. You walk in there acting like you don't belong, they'll treat you like you don't belong. You walk in like you own the place, they'll believe it. The dress was finished on schedule. When Clara tried it on for the final fitting, even Celeste looked satisfied. "You'll do," the dressmaker said, which, coming from her, was basically a standing ovation. Clara looked at herself in the mirror. The dress fit perfectly. Midnight blue silk that made her skin look pale and her eyes look huge. Her hair was still short, still obviously cut, but Celeste had styled it somehow, made it look intentional instead of traumatic. She looked like someone who mattered. "Don't cry," Celeste warned. "You'll ruin your face." "I'm not crying." "You look like you're thinking about it." Clara was, but she held it together. The night of the ball arrived too fast. Clara spent the afternoon in a state of controlled panic, trying on the dress 3 more times to make sure it still fit, practicing walking in shoes that were slightly too tight, and reminding herself to breathe. Margaret found her around 6, already dressed, already spiraling. "You're going to be fine," the older woman said. "What if I'm not?" "Then you'll be not fine in a very expensive dress. Could be worse." The Duke was waiting in the entrance hall at 7. He looked like he'd been carved from stone and dressed by someone who understood drama. Black coat, silver buttons, the kind of formal wear that announced wealth without being loud about it. He saw Clara on the stairs. Stopped. "You look—" He paused. Seemed to be searching for the right word. "Terrified?" Clara offered. "Strong. You look strong." It was maybe the best compliment she'd ever received. The carriage ride to the ball was quiet. Clara watched the countryside pass and tried to remember how to breathe. The Duke sat across from her, reviewing what looked like a guest list. "Who should I avoid?" Clara asked. "No one. You're with me. That means you're untouchable." "That's very confident. That's very true. These people understand power. And right now, I have more of it than anyone in that room." The ballroom was in the Ashford estate, smaller than Blackthorn, but still impressive. Carriages lined the drive, guests in their finest flooding through the entrance. Clara could hear music already, could see light spilling from every window. They stepped out. The Duke offered his arm. Clara took it, felt the solid weight of him beside her. "Ready?" he asked. "No." "Good. The best things happen when we're not ready." They walked in together. The room went quiet. Not all at once, more like a wave, starting at the entrance and rippling outward as people noticed them, noticed Clara. She heard the whispers, could almost make out words. "That's her. The Whitlock girl. The one who—" The Duke kept walking. Clara kept pace. They moved through the crowd like they owned it, and maybe they did. Maybe power really was just about believing you had it. Vivian was near the far wall talking to a cluster of older women. She looked up, saw Clara. The expression on her face was worth every terrifying second of this night. Shock, fury, something that looked almost like fear.
Clara smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, quiet curve of her mouth that said, "I'm still here, and you can't erase me." The Duke guided her to the center of the room. People made space, always made space for power. "Your Grace," someone said. Lord Ashford, the host, 60-something, kind eyes, the sort of man who'd probably never had a hard day in his life, but somehow managed not to be completely insufferable about it. "We're honored by your presence."
Lord Ashford, thank you for the invitation. The Duke gestured to Clara. May I introduce Miss Clara Whitlock? She's staying at Blackthorn as my guest. Miss Whitlock, charming. Ashford's eyes flicked to her hair, away, back to her face. To his credit, he didn't comment. I hope you'll enjoy the evening. I'm sure I will. Others approached. Introductions were made. Clara smiled until her face hurt and tried to remember all the names being thrown at her. Most people were polite.
Some were openly curious. A few looked at her like she was a scandal waiting to happen. She probably was. Across the room, Vivienne was moving, cutting through the crowd with purpose. Charlotte and Annabelle trailed behind her, both looking like they'd rather be literally anywhere else. "Rowan," Vivienne said, arriving in a swirl of expensive fabric. She didn't even look at Clara. "How lovely to see you here." "Vivienne," the Duke's tone was ice. "I trust you're well."
As well as can be expected, given recent difficulties. Now she looked at Clara. The smile on her face was sharp enough to cut. Clara, what a surprise! I didn't realize you'd recovered enough to attend social events. I'm resilient, Clara said. Clearly, though I wonder if it's wise putting yourself in such a public position. People talk, you know, and not always kindly. Let them talk. Oh, they will. They'll wonder why a girl who was kept home out of kindness is suddenly being paraded around like a prize. They'll ask questions about your sudden elevation in status. They'll speculate about what you've done to earn such attention. The Duke's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on Clara's arm. A warning. Don't react. Don't give her what she wants. People can speculate all they like, Clara said. Her voice stayed level. I know the truth. That's enough. Is it? Because the truth is you're still the same girl you always were. Damaged. Desperate. Playing at being something you're not. And what are you playing at, Mrs. Whitlock? The Duke's voice cut through the conversation like a blade. Concerned stepmother? Devoted guardian? We both know what you are. Vivienne's eyes went cold. Careful, Your Grace. Making accusations without proof is dangerous, especially for someone in your position. Is that a threat? It's a reminder. You have a reputation to maintain. I'd hate to see it damaged by association with questionable company. She swept away before either of them could respond. Charlotte mouthed sorry as she passed. Annabelle wouldn't meet Clara's eyes. Well, the Duke said quietly, she's feeling bold. She's feeling cornered. That's worse. Agreed. Stay close. The evening continued. Clara danced, badly at first, then less badly as she remembered the lessons her father had insisted on years ago. The Duke was a good partner, steady and patient when she stumbled. Other men asked for dances too, curious about the mysterious guests the Duke had brought. She accepted some invitations, declined others, tried to read the room, figure out who was genuinely interested and who was just gathering gossip. Around 10, she excused herself to find the ladies' retiring room. Thomas, her guard, followed at a discreet distance. The retiring room was empty when she arrived. Clara took a moment to breathe, to let the mask drop for just a second. The door opened. Vivienne, of course. Well, Vivienne said, closing the door behind her, look at you, playing dress-up, pretending you're something special. I wasn't pretending anything. I was invited. You were paraded, like a performing animal, the Duke's little charity project. Vivienne moved closer. Do you really think this ends well for you? Do you think he'll keep caring once the novelty wears off? I think that's none of your concern. Everything about you is my concern. You're still my responsibility, still living off my late husband's memory. I'm living off my own work now, my own choices. Choices? Vivienne laughed. You have no idea what choices really cost. what I've had to do to survive, to protect my daughters.
Protect them from what? From me? I never wanted what they had. I just wanted to exist without being punished for it. You existed just fine. I gave you a roof, food, safety. You gave me scraps and called it generosity. You stole my future and called it protection. Clara's voice was rising. She forced it down. I'm done pretending to be grateful for abuse. Abuse. Vivian's face twisted. You don't know what abuse is. You had it easy. You were just too blind and selfish to see it. The door opened. Thomas stood there, hand on his weapon. Is there a problem? He asked. No problem, Clara said. She looked at Vivian. We're done here. She walked out. Left Vivian standing alone in the retiring room. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them together, forced them still. Thomas walked beside her back to the ballroom. You all right? Getting there. The Duke found her immediately. What happened? Vivian. Being Vivian. Did she threaten you? Not directly. Just reminded me I'm supposed to stay in my place. Your place is wherever you choose to be. He guided her back to the dance floor. One more dance, then we leave. I think we've made our point. The final dance was a waltz. Clara let herself focus on the steps, on the rhythm, on anything except the weight of all those eyes watching her. When the music ended, the Duke bowed. She curtsied. Polite applause rippled through the room. Thank you for the dance, Miss Whitlock. Thank you for the invitation, Your Grace. They were heading toward the exit when it happened. A scream, loud, panicked. The crowd parted. Someone was on the floor, a woman. Clara couldn't see who at first, then the crowd shifted again. Vivian. Collapsed. Not moving. Annabelle was kneeling beside her, crying. Someone help, please, she just fell. The Duke moved fast, pushing through the crowd. Clara followed. Vivian's face was pale, too pale, her breathing shallow. She needs a doctor, someone said. Already sent for one, Lord Ashford called. He's on the way. The Duke checked her pulse. It's weak, irregular. What happened? Clara asked Annabelle. I don't know. She was talking to someone and then she grabbed her chest and fell. Annabelle looked up. Her face was streaked with tears and something else. Accusation. What did you say to her? In the retiring room? Nothing that would cause this. You must have said something. Annabelle, stop, Charlotte said quietly. She looked at Clara. She's been under stress. A lot of stress. The doctor said her heart... She stopped, looked guilty. What about her heart? The Duke asked. She's been having pains for weeks. She wouldn't do anything about it. Said she was too busy. The doctor arrived 15 minutes later, examined Vivian quickly, efficiently. His face was grave. She needs to be moved, carefully, back to her estate. I'll need to monitor her overnight. Is she going to be all right? Charlotte whispered. I don't know yet. Her heart's very weak. This could be a seizure, could be something worse. He looked around. Did anyone see what happened? What she ate or drank? People shook their heads. No one had noticed. Everyone had been too busy watching Clara. Vivienne was carried out on a makeshift stretcher. Annabelle and Charlotte followed, both crying. The ball dissolved. People left in clusters, whispering. The scandal of the century, a woman collapsing at a social event, and the stepdaughter she'd abused standing right there when it happened. Clara felt sick. The Duke guided her to the carriage. They rode back in silence. Inside Blackthorn, Margaret was waiting. Heard what happened, she said. Whole staff's talking about it. Is she going to die? Clara asked. Don't know. Doctor's good, but if it's her heart... Margaret shrugged. Clara went to her room, sat on the bed, tried to process what had just happened. Vivienne. Collapsed. Possibly dying. And Clara had been there. Had argued with her less than an hour before. If Vivian died, people would blame Clara, would say she'd caused it, would turn her into a villain. Even if she survived, she'd use this. Would tell everyone Clara had threatened her, had said something so terrible it had literally stopped her heart. Either way, Clara lost. She was still sitting there when someone knocked. The Duke. May I come in? It's your house. He entered, closed the door. This wasn't your fault. People are going to say it was. Let them say it. We know the truth. The
The truth doesn't matter if no one believes it. Then we make them believe it. He sat down in the chair near her bed. I've sent people to investigate, to find out exactly what Vivian ate, drank, who she talked to. If this was natural, we'll prove it. If it was something else, he trailed off. Clara looked up. You think someone poisoned her? I think it's convenient. Her collapsing at the exact moment when you're most visible, most vulnerable to accusation. Who would... Clara stopped, thought about it. You think she did it herself? I think it's possible. Vivienne's proven she'll do anything to destroy you, including destroying herself if it takes you down with her. Clara's stomach turned. That's insane. That's desperate. And desperate people do insane things. They sat in silence. Clara tried to imagine being that consumed by hatred, couldn't quite get there. What do I do? She asked finally. Nothing. You stay here. You let me handle this. And you don't let her win by making you feel guilty for surviving. Easier said than done. The next morning brought news. Vivienne was alive, stable, but weak. The doctor said it was her heart, years of stress finally catching up with her. She'd need rest, months of it. She couldn't attend social events, couldn't manage her household, couldn't do much of anything except lie in bed and recover. And somehow, within hours, rumors started spreading that Clara had cursed her, had wished her ill, had said something so cruel it had broken Vivienne's heart. The Duke called a meeting with his advisors. Clara wasn't invited, but she heard about it from Margaret. He's furious, Margaret reported. Says whoever's spreading these rumors is going to answer for it. It's probably Vivienne herself, even from a sickbed. Probably, but he can't prove it. Clara spent the day in the library trying to read, trying to think, trying to figure out how to fight an enemy who was winning even while dying. That evening, a letter arrived, hand-delivered, sealed with wax. Clara opened it. You've won nothing. When I recover, I will take everything from you, your reputation, your safety, your life. You should have stayed invisible. Clara's hands shook as she read it. Read it again. This was never going to end, not unless one of them was dead. She found the Duke in his study, showed him the letter. He read it. His jaw went tight. She's threatening you, directly. That's what she's been doing all along, just usually more subtly. I can use this. Take it to the magistrate. Get an order of protection, which she'll ignore. You know she will. Then what do you want me to do? Clara thought about it. About 3 years of being small. About weeks of being protected. About a future that would never be safe as long as Vivienne existed. I want to end this, she said quietly. Permanently. Whatever it takes. The Duke studied her. What are you suggesting? I don't know yet. But I'm done running, done hiding, done waiting for her next move. Clara met his eyes. I want to destroy her before she destroys me. That's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. At least this way I'm choosing the danger instead of just enduring it. He was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. All right, we end this. But we do it smart. We do it carefully. And we do it in a way that she can't recover from. How? I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Try me. The Duke pulled out a map, pointed to a location 30 miles from the estate. There's a property here, abandoned, used to belong to my family. Vivienne wants to buy it, has for years, thinks there's value in it she can exploit. So we let her think she can have it. We draw her out, get her to meet us there to finalize the deal. And when she shows up, he looked at Clara. We record everything, every threat, every admission, everything she's done, and we use it to destroy her publicly. She's not going to confess. She will if she thinks she's won. If she thinks you're finally giving up, finally leaving, finally out of her way. The Duke's expression was cold. Pride makes people stupid. We use hers against her. It was risky, reckless, exactly the kind of plan that could backfire and get Clara killed. She loved it. When? She asked. Soon, while she's still weak, while she thinks she's safe. Clara looked at the map, at the X marking where this would all end, one way or another. Set it up, she said. The Duke smiled. Not a kind smile.
A dangerous one. Already done. The property was called Millstone House, and it looked like something out of a ghost story. 2 stories of crumbling stone, windows like empty eye sockets, gardens that had gone wild decades ago. The Duke's family had abandoned it after his grandfather died. Too expensive to maintain, too remote to be useful.
It had been rotting there ever since. Clara stood in the overgrown drive 3 days after the ball and tried not to think about how many ways this could go wrong. "It's perfect," the Duke said beside her. He was surveying the building like a general surveying a battlefield. Isolated, 1 entrance, good sight lines. If she brings people, we'll see them coming. If she comes at all. She'll come. I sent word this morning. Told her you'd agreed to leave the duchy permanently in exchange for a cash settlement and the deed to this property. Told her all she had to do was meet us here to finalize the paperwork. And she believed you? She believes I want you gone. That part's true enough in her mind. He glanced at Clara. You ready for this? Clara touched the device hidden beneath her dress, a small recording mechanism the Duke had acquired from someone who specialized in such things. It would capture every word spoken within 20 feet, assuming it worked, assuming Vivian actually said anything incriminating, assuming Clara didn't get killed first. Ready as I'll ever be. They'd arrived early deliberately, wanted to set the scene, make sure everything was in place before Vivian showed up. The Duke's men were stationed around the perimeter, 6 of them, armed, under orders to stay hidden unless things went badly wrong. Thomas was inside the house, positioned upstairs where he could see everything but wouldn't be seen. He'd objected strenuously to the plan until the Duke had pointed out that Clara was going to do this with or without protection. And wouldn't he rather be there to help? That had shut him up. Margaret had objected too, louder and longer, until Clara had finally said, I'm doing this. You can support me, or you can stay home and worry. Your choice. Margaret had chosen support. She was back at the estate, coordinating communication in case something went wrong. Clara tried not to think about what something going wrong might look like. The Duke checked his watch. She should be here soon. You remember the plan? Let her talk. Ask leading questions. Get her to admit what she's done. And if she tries to hurt you? Thomas shoots her. I was hoping for something slightly less violent, but yes, essentially. He looked at Clara, really looked at her. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. There is no other way. You know that. I know I'm asking you to face someone who's tried to kill you. That's not nothing. Neither is spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Clara straightened her shoulders. I'm tired of being afraid. This ends today. The sound of a carriage interrupted them. The Duke tensed. That's her. Get inside. I'll bring her in. Clara moved into the house. The interior was worse than the exterior. Rotted floorboards, peeling wallpaper, the smell of mold and abandonment. She positioned herself in what used to be a drawing room, standing near a window where she could see the drive. Vivienne descended from her carriage carefully, like she was still weak, but her eyes were sharp as she scanned the property. She'd brought someone with her, a man Clara didn't recognize, large, rough-looking, not a servant. Clara's stomach tightened. This was already deviating from the plan. The Duke met Vivienne at the entrance. Claire couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could read Vivienne's body language. Suspicious, aggressive, demanding. The Duke gestured toward the house. Vivienne hesitated, then followed. The large man stayed with the carriage. Clara pressed herself against the wall beside the door. Listened. Absurd location for a meeting, Vivienne was saying. You couldn't choose somewhere civilized? The property is part of the settlement. I thought you'd want to see what you're getting. I want to see the girl. Where is she? Inside. Waiting. They entered. Vivienne saw Clara and her expression shifted, satisfaction mixed with something darker. Well, Vivienne said, look at you. Finally learned your place. Clara didn't respond, kept her face neutral. The Duke closed the door. Shall we discuss terms? I'd rather discuss why you've dragged me to this ruin when you could have handled this at the estate. Privacy. I thought you'd appreciate discretion. Discretion. Vivienne's eyes narrowed. Or witnesses. Which is it? Does it matter? You're getting what you wanted. Clara leaves. You win. I've already won. She's nothing, has always been nothing. Vivienne turned to Clara. Isn't that right, dear? You finally realized you can't compete, can't survive in a world that requires actual strength instead of pathetic resilience. Clara's jaw tightened. Don't react. Let her talk. I'm leaving because it's easier, Clara said quietly. Because fighting you costs more than it's worth. How sensible. You're finally learning. Vivian moved closer. Did it hurt? Realizing that everything you've done, everything you've tried, was pointless? That I'd win no matter what? Yes. Good. Pain is educational. Vivian smiled. I want you to remember this feeling. Remember what it's like to lose to someone better than you. Someone smarter. Someone who understood from the beginning that you were disposable. The Duke cleared his throat. Mrs. Whitlock, perhaps we should focus on the paperwork. In a moment. I'm enjoying this. She studied Clara. You really thought the Duke would save you, didn't you? Thought he'd be different from everyone else who's failed you. How disappointing to learn he's just as pragmatic, just as willing to sacrifice you when it becomes inconvenient. Clara glanced at the Duke. He gave the smallest nod. Keep going. You're right, Clara said. I was naive. I thought people could be good, could be fair. People are self-interested. The sooner you learn that, the better. Vivian pulled a handkerchief from her sleeve, dabbed at her forehead. She looked paler than she had a moment ago. Though I suppose you won't need to learn anything now. You'll be gone. Finally erased. The way you should have been years ago. When my father died. Your father was a fool. Married me thinking I'd care for his precious daughter, as if I'd waste resources on someone else's child when I had my own to provide for. She laughed, but it came out strained. He made it easy, though, so trusting, so willing to believe I'd honor his wishes. Clara's breath caught. What do you mean he made it easy? Oh, don't look so shocked. Your father was sick long before he died. Weak heart. The doctors said he had years. But years was too long to wait. I had daughters to establish. A position to secure. His death was convenient. The room went very, very quiet. You killed him, Clara said. I helped nature along. There's a difference. Vivian's hand went to her chest. Her breathing was getting labored. A little extra medication here, a bit of stress there. His heart simply couldn't take it. The Duke stepped forward. You're confessing to murder. I'm confessing to nothing. You have no proof. And even if you did... She stopped, swayed. Clara saw it happen in slow motion, Vivian's face going from pale to gray, her hand clutching at her chest, the same gesture from the ball. She's collapsing, Clara said. The Duke moved fast, catching Vivian before she hit the floor. Thomas, get down here! Thomas appeared from upstairs, weapon drawn. What happened? Her heart, same as before. The Duke lowered Vivian carefully to the ground. We need the doctor, now. I'll ride back for him. Thomas was already moving. Clara knelt beside Vivian. Her stepmother's eyes were half closed, her breathing shallow and ragged. Don't you dare die, Clara said. Not before everyone knows what you did. Vivian's eyes focused on her. You think this changes anything? You just confessed to killing my father. Your word against mine. Who do they believe? The dying woman, or the girl who drove her to it? Clara's hands clenched. The recording will prove it. For the first time, Vivian looked uncertain. Recording? Clara pulled out the device, showed it to her. Every word, every confession, all of it preserved. Vivian's expression crumbled, not into fear, into rage. I learned from you. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to be smarter? Stronger? Clara leaned closer. You taught me that people are self-interested, that power matters more than fairness. So I used power, the Duke's power. And now you're going to answer for what you've done. They won't believe it. They'll say, you forced me, coerced a dying woman. You're not dying. Your heart's weak, but you're not dying. The doctor said you could live for years if you took care of yourself. Clara's voice was hard. But you won't. You'll spend whatever time you have left facing consequences, real ones, for once in your miserable life. Vivian tried to speak. Couldn't. Her breathing was getting worse. The Duke checked her pulse. It's irregular. We need to get her stabilized.
Why? The word came out harsher than Clara intended. Why save her? After everything she's done? Because we're not like her. Because justice means due process, not letting someone die in an abandoned house. He looked at Clara. And because if she dies now, you'll never be free of her. She'll be a martyr, a victim. Is that what you want? No.
Clara wanted Vivian alive. Wanted her to face every person she'd lied to, every family she'd manipulated, every victim she'd created. Wanted her to live with the weight of her crimes. Fine. Save her. Thomas returned 20 minutes later with the doctor, the same one who'd treated Vivian after the ball. He examined her quickly, efficiently. She needs to be moved, carefully. This is another cardiac event, possibly worse than the first. He looked at the Duke. What was she doing here?
Meeting with us. She became agitated and collapsed. Agitated about what? Clara held up the recording device. Confessing to murder. The doctor's eyebrows rose. I see. Well, she's in no condition to confess to anything now. She needs rest. Absolute quiet. Weeks of it. Minimum. Can she be moved to her estate? Not advisable. The journey might kill her. She should stay somewhere close. Somewhere she can be monitored. The Duke considered.
Blackthorn has medical facilities. She can stay there. Clara stared at him. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. She stays where we can watch her, where she can't disappear or manufacture an alibi. He looked at the doctor. Can she be moved that far? If we're very careful and very slow. They fashioned a stretcher from furniture. Moved Vivian with agonizing care into the carriage. The Duke rode with her, monitoring her breathing, while Clara rode separately with Thomas. That was brave, Thomas said during the ride. What you did. It was stupid. Maybe. But it worked. You got her to confess. To killing my father, not to the fire, not to the other attempts. One confession's enough to start pulling threads. Once people know she's capable of murder, they'll look at everything else differently. Clara hoped he was right. Blackthorn's medical wing was small but well-equipped. The doctor settled Vivian into a room, attached monitoring equipment, gave strict instructions about visitors. No one sees her without medical supervision, and no stress. Her heart literally cannot take it. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to demand access, wanted to make Vivian face what she'd done. But the doctor was firm. She needs rest, or she dies. Your choice. It wasn't a choice at all. Margaret found Clara in the library that evening. Heard what happened.
You all right? I got her to confess. We have it recorded. She admitted to killing my father. That's huge. It's not enough. She's lying in a bed recovering while I'm still... Clara stopped, tried to organize her thoughts. She's going to spin this, going to say I drove her to it, that the stress of dealing with me caused her heart problems. Let her spin. You have proof. Proof doesn't matter if people don't believe it. Then make them believe it. Margaret sat down.
You've been reacting this whole time, defending yourself, playing her game. Maybe it's time to change games. How? You've got a recording of her confessing to murder. Use it. Not in court. Public opinion. Let people hear what she is. Let them decide. Clara thought about it. About 3 years of silence, about being erased, about finally having a voice. The Duke won't like it. The Duke wants justice through proper channels. You want everyone to know the truth. Those aren't the same thing. Margaret leaned forward. I'm not saying go against him. I'm saying maybe there's room for both approaches. Clara pulled out the recording device, looked at it. Such a small thing to hold so much weight. I need to think about this. Don't think too long. Vivian's people are already spreading rumors, saying you drove her to collapse, saying you're unstable, dangerous. The longer you wait, the harder it gets to fight back. Margaret left. Clara sat alone with the recording. She could do it, could make copies, could distribute them to every major household in the duchy, could force people to hear what Vivian really was, or she could trust the Duke's approach. Slow, methodical, legal, safe. Clara had been safe for 3 years. It had nearly killed her. She made her decision. The next morning, Clara asked to borrow the Duke's office. He looked surprised, but agreed. What do you need it for?
Correspondence.
I have some letters to write. All right, let me know if you need anything. She waited until he left. Then she pulled out paper and started writing. Not letters, transcripts. Word-for-word copies of Vivian's confession. Every damning sentence, every casual admission of cruelty. It took hours. Her hand cramped, but she kept going. When she finished, she had 20 copies, each one perfect, each one devastating. She addressed them to the 20 most influential families in the duchy, sealed them, took them to the estate's mail office. These need to go out today, she told the clerk. All of them? All of them. That's going to cost, bill it to my account. The clerk looked uncertain but accepted the letters. Clara walked away feeling lighter and more terrified than she'd ever been. The Duke found out that evening. He came to her room holding one of the transcripts. What is this? Exactly what it looks like. You sent this to every major family? Yes, without telling me. You would have tried to stop me. His jaw worked. Of course I would have stopped you. This is... Clara, do you understand what you've just done? I've told the truth. You've declared war. Public, messy, impossible to control war. He ran a hand through his hair. Vivian's family has connections, resources. They're going to come after you for this. They're going to say you forged it, that you're lying, that you... I know, I don't care. You should care. This could destroy you. I'm already destroyed, or I was, for 3 years. Clara stood, faced him directly. I'm tired of fighting quietly, tired of being reasonable, tired of waiting for systems to work that were built to protect people like Vivian. So I'm using the only weapon I have, the truth. And if it costs me everything, at least I chose it. The Duke stared at her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, he smiled. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. This is going to get complicated. It already was complicated. He handed back the transcript. For what it's worth, I would have done the same thing, just with more planning. Planning's overrated. Says the girl who just started a social war. The responses started arriving 2 days later. Some families sent polite acknowledgments. Some sent outrage. A few sent support. And then the invitations started. Lady Ashford wanted Clara to attend tea. Lord and Lady Brennan requested her presence at dinner. The Whitmore family asked if she'd speak at a gathering about justice and accountability. They want to meet you, Margaret said, reading through the stack. The girl who stood up to Vivian Whitlock. Or they want to see if I'm as crazy as she says I am. Either way, they're paying attention. Clara accepted the invitations. All of them. The first tea was awkward. Lady Ashford was kind but obviously curious, asking careful questions about Clara's time with Vivian. Clara answered honestly. Didn't embellish. Didn't need to. The truth was bad enough. By the third event, Clara had found her rhythm. She wasn't there to perform, wasn't there to convince anyone. She was just there to exist, visibly, undeniably, unashamedly. And people noticed. You're becoming famous, the Duke said after she returned from a dinner party. Everyone's talking about you. Is that good or bad? Depends on what you do with it. Clara thought about that, about having attention, about people finally seeing her. I want to help people, she said. Others like me, the ones who get erased. That's ambitious. So is everything else I've done lately. He studied her. You've changed since that first day in my study. I had to. Staying the same wasn't working. No, it wasn't. He pulled out a folder. I've been working on something. Wanted to run it by you first. What is it? A formal complaint against Vivian, criminal charges, murder, fraud, conspiracy, everything we can make stick. He opened the folder. The recording gives us grounds, your testimony gives us details. If we pursue this, she could spend the rest of her life in prison. If we pursue it, not when. Because it's not my choice alone, it's yours. This is your life, your father, your justice. I won't push you into something you're not ready for. Clara looked at the documents. At years of law condensed into formal accusations. What happens to Charlotte and Annabelle if we do this? They'll have to answer questions, testify about what they knew. It won't be easy for them. They didn't know. Or if they did, they were too scared to act. That doesn't excuse them. No, but it doesn't make them monsters either. Clara closed the folder. I need time to think about what I actually want. Take all the time you need. But 3 days later, the decision was made for her. Charlotte arrived at Blackthorn unannounced. She looked terrible, pale, thin, like she hadn't slept in weeks. I need to talk to you, she said when Clara met her in the drawing room. All right, talk. Charlotte sat down heavily. Mother's awake, talking. The doctor says she's improving. I know. I've been getting updates. She's planning something. I can see it. The way she talks, the way she looks when she thinks no one's watching. Charlotte's hands twisted together. She's going to come after you again, harder this time. Let her try. You don't understand. She's contacted people, lawyers, politicians, people who owe her favors. She's building something. A defense? An offense. She's going to destroy you, Clara, systematically, publicly. She's going to make everyone believe you're unstable, that you drove her to everything she did, that you're the real monster. Clara sat down across from her. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of being afraid of her, tired of watching her hurt people and doing nothing. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. She killed your father. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know until I heard the recording, but now I do, and I can't pretend anymore. What do you want from me? Nothing. I just wanted to warn you, and to tell you that if you need someone to testify about the letters, about how she treated you, about anything, I'll do it. Clara stared at her. Charlotte, who'd always been weak, who'd always chosen safety over courage, who was finally choosing differently. That could destroy your relationship with your mother. It already is destroyed. I just didn't want to admit it. Charlotte wiped her eyes. She's not going to change. She's going to keep hurting people until someone stops her. I thought maybe it should be me, for once. Clara reached across the space between them, took Charlotte's hand. Thank you. I haven't done anything yet. You came here. You told the truth. That's everything. Charlotte left an hour later. Clara immediately went to find the Duke. I'm ready. File the charges. All of them. You're sure? Charlotte's going to testify. She knows things, saw things that I didn't. With her testimony and the recording, we can make this stick. The Duke nodded slowly. Once we start this, there's no going back. Good. I'm tired of going back. The charges were filed the next morning. By afternoon, the entire duchy knew. Vivian Whitlock was formally accused of murder. The responses were immediate and loud. Some families rallied around Vivian, claiming she was being persecuted. Others distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with scandal. And Clara became the center of everything. People wanted her story, wanted to know how she'd survived, how she'd found the courage to fight back. She told them, over and over. At dinners, at gatherings, in formal interviews for the duchy's newspaper. She wasn't gentle, wasn't diplomatic. She told the truth, harsh, unvarnished, uncomfortable. And people listened. You're changing the conversation, the Duke said one evening. They were in his study reviewing correspondence. People are talking about how society treats disposable children, about the systems that protect abusers. Good. It's making some people uncomfortable. Even better. He smiled. You've become dangerous. I learned from the best. The trial was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, Clara continued her quiet revolution. She spoke at gatherings, met with other young women who'd been erased by their families, started building something that looked almost like a movement. The Duke supported her, gave her resources, gave her protection, gave her space to become whoever she was going to be. And slowly, carefully, Clara started to feel like she might actually survive this. Then, 3 weeks before the trial, Annabelle arrived at Blackthorn. She looked different from Charlotte, harder, more certain. I need to speak with Clara, alone. The Duke hesitated. Clara nodded. It's fine. Let her in. They met in the library. Annabelle paced while Clara waited. Mother wants to make a deal, Annabelle said finally. What kind of deal? She'll plead guilty to everything, in exchange for you agreeing to a reduced sentence, 20 years instead of life. Clara's stomach turned. She murdered my father. I know, but 20 years is still 20 years. She'll be 70 when she gets out, effectively her whole life. Annabelle stopped pacing. And it saves everyone from a trial. From months of testimony and publicity and pain, it also lets her control the narrative, lets her confess on her terms instead of being forced to face everything publicly. Yes, but you get justice. She goes to prison. You get to move on. Clara thought about it, about 3 years of stolen life, about her father poisoned slowly while Vivian smiled. No, Clara shade. No, she doesn't get to control this, doesn't get to make deals. She faces trial. She faces every person she's hurt. She faces the full weight of what she's done.
That's vindictive. That's justice. Real justice. Not the convenient kind. Clara stood. Tell her no deal. Tell her I'll see her in court. Annabelle looked like she wanted to argue. Didn't. I'll tell her, but Clara, this is going to get ugly. It already is ugly. At least this way everyone sees it. The trial began on a cold morning in late autumn. The courthouse was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the aisles, crowds gathered outside. Clara sat in the front row, the Duke beside her, Charlotte on her other side. Vivian was brought in wearing black, still pale, still weak-looking, playing the victim until the very end. But when the charges were read, when the evidence was presented, when witness after witness described her cruelty, something shifted in the room. People started to see her, really see her, not as the elegant widow, not as the concerned mother, as the monster she'd always been. The prosecution played the recording. Vivian's voice filled the courtroom, casual and cold, admitting to murder. The jury's expressions changed, hardened. Charlotte testified about the letters, about watching Clara be systematically erased. Thomas testified about the fire. The doctor testified about Vivian's heart condition, real, but not as severe as she'd claimed. And finally, Clara testified. She told the truth, all of it, 3 years of abuse condensed into 2 hours of testimony. The courtroom was silent when she finished. The defense tried to discredit her, called her vindictive, unstable, a liar seeking revenge. Clara didn't flinch, didn't break, just kept telling the truth. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the 4 women stood. On the charge of murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Vivian's face crumbled. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. On all remaining charges, we find the defendant guilty. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks out. Vivian was remanded to custody immediately. As she was led away, she looked at Clara one last time. No words, just a look that said, "You won." Clara looked back, steady, unbroken. I know. Outside the courthouse, people were waiting, press, supporters, curious onlookers. They parted as Clara walked through. Someone started clapping, then another person, then another. By the time Clara reached the carriage, the whole crowd was applauding. She didn't wave, didn't perform, just climbed into the carriage and let Thomas take her home. The Duke was waiting when she arrived. "How do you feel?" he asked. Clara thought about it. Tired, relieved, still angry, but less. That's normal. Is it? I don't know. I've never survived what you survived. They walked inside together. Margaret had prepared tea. Clara drank it slowly, letting warmth spread through her. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide what comes next. You're free, Clara. Actually free. For the first time in years. Free. The word felt foreign, strange, good. I want to help people, Clara said. The ones like me. The ones who get erased. Then we'll make that happen. Whatever you need. Clara looked at him. This man who'd seen her when she was invisible, who'd fought for her when no one else would. Thank you, she said, for everything. You did this, not me. You stood up. You fought. You refused to disappear. I almost did, though. Almost let her win. But you didn't. That's what matters. Clara set down her tea, looked out the window at the gardens, at the estate that had become her sanctuary, at the future spreading out before her, finally hers to choose. She'd survived. More than that, she'd won. Not because she'd destroyed Vivian, because she'd proven that some people refuse to be erased, that survival could be its own kind of victory. That strength wasn't about never falling. It was about choosing to stand back up. Clara smiled,
small, quiet, real. For the first time in 3 years, she felt like herself, whoever that was going to be. Sentencing came on a gray morning 2 weeks later. The courthouse was even more crowded than before. People who'd followed the trial, people who'd heard Clara's story, people who just wanted to witness the end of something that had gripped the entire duchy. Clara wore dark blue, the same color as the dress from the ball, but simpler. She'd learned that she didn't need elaborate clothes to be seen anymore. She just needed to show up. Vivienne looked smaller in the defendant's box. Prison had stripped away the polish, left her looking older and harder, but her eyes were still sharp when they found Clara. Still calculating. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Vivienne Whitlock, you have been found guilty on all charges. Before I pass sentence, is there anything you'd like to say? Vivienne stood slowly, looked directly at Clara. I regret nothing, she said. Her voice was steady, clear. I did what was necessary to protect my family, to secure their futures. If that makes me a monster in your eyes, so be it. But I won't apologize for survival. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged his gavel. That's enough. Mrs. Whitlock, you are hereby sentenced to 40 years in prison without possibility of parole. You will also forfeit all assets acquired through fraudulent means, which will be returned to their rightful owners. Court is adjourned. 40 years. Vivienne would be 83 when she was released, if she lived that long. She didn't look at Clara as they led her away. Didn't give her the satisfaction of acknowledgement. Clara watched her go and felt nothing. Not triumph, not relief. Just a quiet sense of completion, like a chapter finally closing. Outside, the Duke was waiting with Charlotte and Annabelle. Both sisters looked exhausted. It's over, Charlotte said. Is it? Annabelle's voice was bitter. She's in prison, but we're the ones who have to live with what she did, what we let her do. You were children, Clara said. You didn't let her do anything. We didn't stop her either. Neither did I, for 3 years. Clara looked at both of them. We all survived her the best way we knew how. That's all we could do. Annabelle's expression cracked. I'm sorry for not being braver, for not helping you. You helped when it mattered. That's enough. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. 3 women bound by trauma, trying to figure out how to exist in a world without Vivienne controlling it. What happens to the estate? Charlotte asked. To our home? The court's seizing it, the Duke said, to cover restitution. You'll both receive a portion, enough to live on, but nothing like what you had before. Good, Annabelle said. I never want to set foot in that house again anyway. Clara understood that feeling. The weeks that followed were strange. Clara kept expecting Vivienne to appear, to find some loophole, to escape and come back. But the days passed and nothing happened. Vivienne stayed in prison. The Whitlock estate was liquidated. Life continued without her shadow over it. Clara threw herself into work. The Duke had given her a position, not as a servant, not as a charity case, but as someone who actually mattered. She helped manage household affairs, learned about estate administration, sat in on meetings where decisions were made. She was good at it. Turned out years of running a household while being treated like nothing had taught her more than she'd realized. But the work that mattered most happened in the evenings. Women started coming to Blackthorn. Young ones, mostly. Girls who'd been erased by their families, who'd been treated as disposable, who'd survived cruelty and didn't know where to go next. Clara met with them, one by one. Listened to their stories, helped them find paths forward. You're building something, Margaret said one night, watching Clara finish a meeting with a 17-year-old who'd been locked in an attic for 2 years. Something important. I'm just doing what someone should have done for me. That's what makes it important. The girl, Anne was her name, had left with a position in a household 3 towns over. Far from her family. Far from the people who'd hurt her. Clara had arranged it through the Duke's network, had made sure Anne would be paid fairly, treated well, given actual opportunities. It wasn't saving everyone, but it was saving someone, and someone mattered. 3 months after the trial, Clara received a letter. She didn't recognize the handwriting. Dear Miss Whitlock, my name is Thomas Brennan. You don't know me, but my mother works at Blackthorn. She's told me about you, about what you survived, about what you're doing now. I wrote to you years ago, asked permission to call. You never responded. I assumed you weren't interested. My mother recently told me why you never responded, that the letters were intercepted, that you never knew I'd written at all. I don't know if this is appropriate.
I don't know if you're interested in hearing from someone you've never met, but I wanted you to know that I asked, that I tried, that you weren't forgotten, even when someone was trying very hard to erase you. If you'd like to meet, I'd be honored. If not, I understand. With respect, Thomas Brennan. Clara read the letter 3 times, remembered the stolen correspondence in Vivian's desk, remembered the name, remembered wondering what might have been different if she'd known someone was looking for her. She wrote back, Mr. Brennan, I'd like to meet. Not because I'm looking for rescue or romance or anything complicated, just because I'd like to know the person who thought I was worth writing to when everyone else had decided I wasn't. If you're ever near Blackthorn, please visit. Clara Whitlock. He came 2 weeks later. Tall, serious-looking, with his mother's kind eyes, and a nervous energy that made him seem younger than he probably was. They had tea in the garden, talked for 3 hours, about books, about work, about what it was like growing up thinking you had to earn the right to exist. I like you, Clara said when he was leaving. Thomas looked surprised. That's very direct. I've learned that life's too short to be anything else. I like you too. Can I write to you? Actually write to you this time, without someone stealing the letters? I'd like that. He did write. Long letters about his work in the city, about politics and philosophy and the weather. Clara wrote back. Shorter letters, but honest ones. It wasn't a grand romance, wasn't love at first sight or destiny or any of the things stories promised. It was just 2 people who'd both been hurt finding comfort in someone who understood. That felt like enough. 6 months after the trial, the Duke called Clara to his study. I have a proposition, he said. That sounds ominous. It's not. Or it might be, depending on how you look at it. He pulled out documents. I'm creating a formal program, a fund to support young people who've been abandoned or abused by their families. Education, housing, job placement, everything you've been doing informally, but larger. Official. Clara's throat tightened. That's incredible. I want you to run it. She stared at him. What? You understand this better than anyone. You know what these people need because you were one of them. You know how to help without condescension, without making people feel like charity cases. He slid the papers across the desk. I can fund it, but I can't run it. That needs someone who actually cares, someone who will fight for people the way you fought for yourself. Clara picked up the documents, scanned them, saw her name listed as director, saw a salary that was more than she'd ever imagined earning. This is too much. It's exactly enough. You've earned it. I don't know if I can. You can. You've been doing it already. This just makes it official, makes it sustainable. The Duke leaned forward. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be you. That's all this needs. Clara looked at the papers again, at the opportunity spreading out before her, at the chance to turn her survival into something that mattered for more than just herself. All right, she said. I'll do it. Good. Because I already told people you'd accepted, and they're setting up your office as we speak. You were very confident. I know you. You don't walk away from people who need help. He wasn't wrong. The program launched quietly. Clara didn't want fanfare, just wanted to help people. But word spread anyway. Within weeks, she was getting letters from across the duchy, requests for help, stories of abuse and erasure. She couldn't save everyone. But she saved enough. A 15-year-old boy whose father had beaten him for being too gentle. Clara found him an apprenticeship with a craftsman who valued precision over strength. A 19-year-old girl whose family had married her off to a man 3 times her age. Clara helped her escape, get an annulment, start over. A set of siblings who'd been abandoned when their parents died and the relatives who inherited didn't want the burden. Clara placed them with a family who'd lost children and wanted to love someone again. One person at a time, one life at a time. It wasn't dramatic, wasn't heroic. It was just work. Hard, necessary work that no one else wanted to do. And Clara was good at it. A year after the trial, she attended a gathering of prominent families. Not as someone's guest or someone's charity project, as herself. As the director of the Whitlock Foundation, named after her father,
not Vivian. Named after someone who'd loved her instead of someone who'd tried to destroy her. People knew her now, recognized her. Some because they'd followed the trial. Some because they'd heard about the foundation. Some because their own children had been helped. Lady Ashford approached her during dinner. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "My nephew, he was in a terrible situation with his stepfather. Your foundation helped him escape, gave him options. He's thriving now. I'm glad we could help. You're changing lives, changing the way we think about family obligation and responsibility. It's remarkable." Clara didn't know what to say to that, settled for, "Thank you." But as the evening continued, she realized Lady Ashford wasn't the only one. Person after person approached her, shared stories, expressed gratitude, acknowledged what she'd built. She wasn't invisible anymore, wasn't disposable. She was someone who mattered. The Duke found her near the end of the night, standing alone on a balcony. "Overwhelming?" he asked. "A little. You've earned this. The recognition. The respect." "Have I? Sometimes I feel like I'm just doing what anyone would do." "But they don't. That's the point. You saw a problem and fixed it. You turned your pain into purpose." He stood beside her. "Your father would be proud." Clara's eyes stung. "I hope so. I think about him a lot. Wonder what he'd think of who I've become." "I think he'd recognize you. The strength, the resilience, that's not new. You just had to find it again." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Two people who'd found unlikely friendship in the wreckage of shared trauma. "I'm getting married," Clara said suddenly. The Duke turned. "To Thomas?" "Yes. He asked last week. I said yes." "Congratulations." "He's a good man." "He is. Not perfect, but good." Clara smiled. "We're not doing anything big. Just a small ceremony. Family and friends. I wanted to ask, would you walk me down the aisle? My father can't, obviously, and I don't have anyone else who... I'd be honored." The wedding happened 2 months later. Small, like she'd said, but perfect in its simplicity. Charlotte and Annabelle attended. They'd both moved on with their lives. Charlotte was teaching at a girls' school. Annabelle was studying law, determined to help people navigate systems that had failed them. They were healing, slowly, but healing. Margaret cried through the entire ceremony. Thomas's mother joined her. The Duke walked Clara down the aisle like he'd promised. When he placed her hand in Thomas's, he whispered, "Be happy. You've earned it." Clara looked at Thomas, at this man who'd written to her when she was invisible, who'd waited years for a response that never came, who'd found her anyway. "I do," she said when the officiant asked. Thomas smiled. "I do too." The reception was loud and joyful, and nothing like the balls Clara had attended before. People laughed, danced badly, ate too much, celebrated without performance. Clara stood in the middle of it all and felt the weight of the past 3 years finally lift. She'd survived. More than that, she'd transformed, had taken everything Vivian had tried to do to her and turned it into something that helped others. That felt like victory. Late that night, after the guests had left and Thomas had fallen asleep, Clara stood at the window of their new home, a cottage on Blackthorn grounds, gifted by the Duke, and looked out at the darkness. She thought about the girl she'd been, silent, invisible, enduring because she didn't know she had other options. That girl was gone, had died somewhere between the scissors cutting her hair and the moment she'd decided to fight back. What remained was someone harder, someone who'd learned that survival sometimes meant becoming someone you didn't recognize, someone who'd discovered that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about deciding what you'd rebuild yourself into. Clara touched her hair. It had grown out. Not long, not yet, but enough that she looked like herself again, or like a new version of herself. Someone familiar and strange at the same time. She liked this version better. The foundation was growing. They'd helped 40 people in the first year. Clara wanted to help 100 in the second, 1,000 eventually. She wanted to build something so strong that no one could tear it down. Something that would outlast her, something that would make sure no one else had to disappear the way she almost had. Thomas stirred in bed behind her. "Can't sleep?" "Just thinking." "About what?" "How different everything is. How much has changed." He came to stand beside her. Are you happy? Clara considered the question. Happiness felt too simple for what she was, too clean. I'm satisfied, she said finally. I'm building something that matters. I'm with someone I love. I'm not afraid anymore. Is that happiness? Close enough. She leaned against him. Let herself feel safe, feel settled. Vivian wrote to me, she said quietly. Thomas tensed. When? Last week. The letter just arrived today. What did it say? That she hopes I'm miserable, that I'll never escape what she did to me, that I'm still nothing, even with everything I've built. Clara looked up at him. I burned it. Good. She's wrong, you know. I'm not nothing. I never was. She just convinced me I was for long enough that I believed it. And now? Now I know better. They stood at the window together watching the night, two people who'd been hurt finding peace in the quiet. 3 years later, Clara stood in front of a crowd of 200 people. The annual foundation gala, bigger every year, more support, more resources, more lives changed. She wasn't comfortable with public speaking, probably never would be, but she'd learned to push through discomfort when it mattered. Thank you all for coming, she said. Her voice was steady. 3 years ago, I was invisible, erased, treated like I didn't matter. Today, I stand here because people refused to let me disappear, because someone saw me when I couldn't see myself, because I learned that survival isn't just about enduring, it's about deciding what you become after. She paused. Let the words settle. This foundation exists because no one should have to fight alone, because being disposable isn't an identity. It's a condition imposed by people who benefit from your silence. We exist to give people their voices back, to give them options, to remind them they matter. Applause. Clara waited for it to quiet. We've helped 300 people in 3 years, found them safe homes, education, jobs, futures. But we're not done. We won't be done as long as there are people who need help, as long as there are families who treat children as burdens instead of blessings, as long as cruelty is easier than compassion. More applause. Clara saw the Duke in the crowd, smiling, saw Thomas, pride written all over his face, saw faces she'd helped, people who'd survived and were thriving. I'm not a hero, she said. I'm just someone who refused to stay invisible, who decided that what was done to me wouldn't define what I did next. And if I can do that, if someone as broken as I was can build something that matters, then anyone can. Thank you. The applause was deafening. Clara stepped away from the podium and let someone else take over. Found a quiet corner, breathed. Margaret found her there. Older now, grayer, but still sharp as ever. You did good, Margaret said. I hate public speaking. You always will. But you do it anyway. That's what matters. Is it? Yes. Bravery isn't not being afraid, it's being afraid and doing it anyway. You taught me that. Clara smiled. I learned from you. We learned from each other. That's how this works. The evening continued. Donations were pledged. Stories were shared. Clara moved through the crowd, talking to supporters, thanking donors, meeting people whose lives had been changed by the foundation's work. Late in the night, she found herself alone on the same balcony where she'd stood years ago at that first gathering. The night felt the same. Cool air, dark sky, the distant sound of music. But everything else was different. She was different. There you are. The Duke. He'd aged too, more gray at his temples, lines around his eyes, but still carrying himself like someone who knew exactly who he was. Just needed a moment, Clara said. Understandable? These events are exhausting. They're necessary. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. He leaned against the railing beside her. You've done something remarkable, built something lasting. We built it. You funded it. Money's easy. Vision is hard. You had the vision. Clara thought about that, about the girl who'd had her hair cut off and her future stolen, about how that girl had become this woman. Do you ever think about your father? She asked. About becoming different from him? Every day. Every decision I make is in opposition to who he was. It's exhausting sometimes. But it's also necessary. Yeah, I understand that. They stood in silence. Two people who'd survived cruelty and chosen to be better. Not perfect, not healed, just better. Vivian died last week, the Duke said quietly. Clara turned. What? Heart attack. In prison. Quick, apparently. The warden sent word. Clara waited for feeling. Relief. Grief. Something. Nothing came. I don't know what to feel about that, she said finally. You don't have to feel anything. She's gone. That's all that matters. Is it? She doesn't get to take up space in your head anymore. She's just gone. You're still here, still building, still mattering. That's the victory. Clara supposed he was right. Vivian was gone. But the damage she'd done, to Clara, to her daughters, to everyone she'd touched, that remained. Clara couldn't undo it, could only keep building something better in the wreckage. Charlotte and Annabelle should know, Clara said. Already sent word. They're both doing well, by the way. Charlotte's engagement was announced last month. Annabelle passed the bar. That's good. They deserve happiness. So do you, Clara smiled. I have happiness. I have work I care about, a husband I love, a life that's mine. What else is there? Nothing. That's everything. She left the gala around midnight. Thomas was waiting with the carriage. They rode home in comfortable silence. Their cottage had grown. They'd added a room for the baby that was coming in 3 months. Clara hadn't planned on children, hadn't been sure she knew how to be a parent after Vivian's example. But Thomas had been patient, and eventually Clara had realized that not knowing how was exactly why she'd be good at it. She'd figure it out, would make mistakes, would love anyway. That night, lying in bed, Clara felt the baby kick. Strong, insistent, alive. You're going to be stubborn, she told her stomach, like your mother. Thomas laughed quietly in the dark. That's probably good. The world needs more stubborn women. The world needs more people who refuse to disappear. Same thing. Clara closed her eyes, let herself drift toward sleep. Tomorrow she'd wake up and go to the foundation, would meet with the new cases, would help people rebuild their lives. But tonight, she just rested. Years passed. The foundation grew. Clara's daughter, named Eleanor after her father's mother, grew too. Stubborn, like Clara had predicted. Brilliant. Kind. Everything Clara had hoped she'd be. Clara taught her early. You matter. Not because of what you look like or what you have, because you're human, because you exist. That's enough. Eleanor believed it. Never had to unlearn the lessons Clara had spent years untangling. That felt like healing. When Clara was 45, she received a letter from the Duchy's Historical Society. They wanted to document her story, wanted to preserve it for future generations. She agreed. The interview took 6 hours. Clara told them everything. The scissors, the stolen letters, the fire, the trial, the foundation, all of it. Why do you think you survived? The interviewer asked. When so many people in similar situations don't. Clara thought about it, about all the moments she could have given up, should have given up, by any reasonable measure. I don't know if I'm the right person to ask, she said. Survival isn't about being stronger or braver or better. Sometimes it's just about being stubborn, about refusing to give people the satisfaction of your destruction. She paused. And sometimes it's about luck. Being in the right place when the right person decided to see you. I had that. Not everyone does. What would you say to people in similar situations now, people who are being erased? That they matter, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when everyone around them is saying otherwise. They matter. Clara looked directly at the camera. And that survival is enough. You don't have to be perfect, don't have to become some triumphant success story. You just have to keep existing, keep breathing, keep refusing to disappear. Everything else builds from there. The interview aired on the Duchy's broadcast network. Clara watched it with Thomas and Eleanor and the Duke, who'd become family in all the ways that mattered. You're famous now, Eleanor said. She was 12, already showing signs of the woman she'd become. I'm not famous. I'm just documented. Same thing. Not really. Famous means people care about you. Documented just means someone thought your story was worth preserving. Your story is worth preserving, the Duke said. It's proof that systems can change, that cruelty doesn't have to win. Clara wasn't sure about that. Cruelty won plenty. She'd just been lucky enough, stubborn enough, to be one of the times it didn't. That would have to be enough. On Clara's 50th birthday, the foundation held a celebration. 500 people helped, 10,000 lives changed, a legacy that would continue long after Clara was gone. She stood in the middle of the celebration and felt the weight of it all. The responsibility, the impact, the meaning. "Are you happy?" Thomas asked. The same question he'd asked 20 years ago. Clara looked around, at the people who'd been helped, at the staff who'd dedicated their lives to this work, at Eleanor, who was already talking about joining the foundation when she was old enough, at the life she'd built from the wreckage of the one that had been stolen. "Yes," she said, "I think I actually am." That night, alone in her study, Clara pulled out an old box. Inside were things she'd saved. The gray dress she'd worn to meet the Duke, the recording device that had captured Vivian's confession, letters from people she'd helped, and at the bottom, wrapped in cloth, a single lock of dark hair, the only piece she'd saved from that morning. From the moment everything changed, she held it up to the light, looked at this relic of her past. Then she put it back in the box, closed the lid, put it away. The past was the past. She'd survived it, had transformed it into something that mattered. That was enough. Clara Whitlock had been invisible, had been erased, had been nothing in everyone's eyes except her own. Now she was a founder, a director, a mother, a wife, a woman who'd proven that surviving was its own kind of victory, that refusing to disappear could change the world. She wasn't perfect, still carried scars, still had nightmares sometimes, still flinched when people raised their voices or moved too quickly. But she was here, was whole, was building something that would outlast her. Years from now, when people told stories about the Whitlock Foundation, they'd talk about the woman who'd started it, the girl who'd had everything stolen and had chosen to build anyway. They'd say she was brave, heroic, inspirational. Clara would disagree. She was just someone who'd refused to stay broken, who'd learned that strength wasn't about never falling. It was about deciding what you became after. That was all. That was everything. And it was enough.